Go live, sir.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. The Department of English, Shagor Mahavidyalaya, in collaboration with IQAC of the same college, has organized this one-day national webinar titled Pandemic, Climate Change and Literature to continue the journey of education to adapt to the new normal amidst the COVID-19 pandemic. COVID-19 pandemic has altered pretty much everything around us. We are facing an unprecedented situation. Like all other areas, it has severely affected it has webinars and video conferences are the only platform at this moment useful for the dissemination and circulation of knowledge in this standstill situation. We have with us three eminent speakers to talk about pandemic, climate change, and literature. We are going to be enriched by their deliberations. I would like to request our honorable teacher in charge, Mr. Probir Kumar Khatua, now to give his welcome address and introduce our speakers to our participants. Probir sir.
Namaskar and good afternoon to everybody present in this webinar. Sagar Mahavidyalaya, the dream of Sagar Islanders, is the only government-aided higher educational institution of Sagar Island, which is situated at the confluence of Hooghly River and Bay of Bengal. Though the island is remote and rural, but it is famous for Gangasagar Mela and mythological incidents. Surpassing many ups and downs, Sagar Mahavidyalaya has started its journey towards excellence as the island's literacy rate is more than 90%. Today, that is on 20 and 2nd September 2020, the Department of English, Sagar Mahavidyalaya, in collaboration with IQAC of this Mahavidyalaya, has organized one-day national webinar titled Pandemic, Climate Change and Literature. In this webinar, at first, we are extremely glad to welcome the Honorable Chief Patron, Mr. Bankim Chandra Hajra, President of the Governing Body of Sagar Mahavidyalaya, MLA Sagar AC, the Chairman Sundarban Development Board, and Gangasagar Bokhali Development Authority. We warmly welcome respected speaker Dr. Ratan Bhattacharya, Associate Professor and Head of PG Department, Damdam Motichil College, and International Visiting Professor, USA, and columnist. Now we heartily welcome Dr. S. Ayappa Raja, Associate Professor, Department of English, Annamalai University. Also, we sincerely welcome Mr. Shobush Sarkar, Assistant Professor, Department of English, University of Gaurbango. We are lucky enough to welcome all other academicians, professors, scholars, researchers, and students participated in the webinar. Hope this program will be highly successful by your full-fledged cooperation and wonderful thought sharing. And from this, we will get new light for our future journey. Thank you. I will conclude my welcome
Thank you very
address.
much, sir. Thank you very much, sir, for your welcome address. So your constant support and dynamic leadership has made this webinar possible. Without this, it was not possible for us to organize this webinar. Thank you very much. Now, on behalf of the organizing committee, I take the opportunity to thank Mr. Bankim Chandra Hajra, the President of the governing body of Sagar Mahavidyalaya, for accepting our request to be the patron of this webinar. His constant patronage has given us the strength to organize this webinar. I request Mr. Hajra to offer his valuable speech. Sir, please give your address, sir.
Good afternoon to everyone present here. It gives me immense pleasure to be a part of this webinar organized by the Department of English of Sagar Mahavidyalaya in collaboration with IQAC of the same college, Sagar Mahavidyalaya, which is situated at Sagar Island of the West Bengal, was established in 1988 to cater to the needs of the higher education of the locality. As the president of the governing body of the college, I feel happy that the organizing committee has organized this one-day national webinar on pandemic climate change of literature. I congratulated the organizer to selecting such a relevant topics in the current critical context of COVID-19. I express my gratitude to the distinguished speaker who have agreed to share their valuable view and idea on these topics. I am certain that the participants of the different disciplines across the country will be enriched by the deliberation of the speaker. I wish you all a great success.
Thank you very much, sir. So you have graced the event with your presence, sir. Your constant support and your patronage was very important to us. Without this, the webinar would have not been made possible. Thank you very much once again. Now I'm going to introduce the joint convener of this webinar, Ms. Asrin Khatun, who is going to explain the objective of this webinar, and she's also going to I'm going to introduce hello I'm going to introduce our joint convener of the webinar, Ms. Asrin Khatun. She's going to she's going to explain the objective of this webinar, and she's also going to introduce our first speaker, Dr. Ratan Bhattacharya. But before that, let me remind you that the feedback link and the filtered email IDs subgroup for how to do the invite Asrin Khatun. She's going to introduce Dr. Bhattacharya.
Yes, thank you, sir.
Hello,
Am I
Asrin,
audible?
are you there?
Yes, thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yes,
Thank you,
yes,
TIC,
yes.
sir. Thank you, TIC, sir. And thank you, our patron, our beloved patron, Bonkim Babu. So thank you, sir. Good afternoon, everyone. I welcome you all to this one-day national webinar. We have got overwhelming response since we dropped our brochure around social media platforms, and we are very, very thankful for that. As far as the topic of this webinar is concerned, it is unnecessary to say that it is the burning issue of today's times. The times we are living in right now is characterized by depression, fear, distress, and individual lives are very much affected because of that. But if we generalize this effect in the broader sense, then these times are making us question our existence itself, which never came within our consideration radar, which never, and these times are compelling us to question our existence and compelling us to take into account issues which used to be ignored or erstwhile or considered taken for granted. be it a tiny virus or the environment around us. This pandemic is giving us challenges to overcome, which raises our awareness of the challenges already in hand. This webinar is going to talk about the challenges already existing with the challenges now in hand. It is going to address the issue of climate crisis and relation with the pandemic situation through a literary approach. And we are very glad to have three amazing speakers who is going to talk about this issue here. And since I'm gaffing half of the screen right now, so I'll take this opportunity to introduce and invite our first speaker, Dr. Ratan Bhattacharjee, who will be talking about pandemic, its apprehension and challenges through a literary response. So allow me to introduce Dr. Ratan Bhattacharjee. Dr. Ratan Bhattacharjee is an associate professor and head of the PG Department of English, Damdam Motijil College, India. The former guest faculty of RBU teachers in American universities in the capacity of international visiting professor. He is also a trilingual poet and columnist in national dailies in English, Assamese, and English. Besides, his articles have been published in many international blogs and portals. He is one of the 5 distinguished members of the International Advisory Board of International Theodore Dreiser Society, Philadelphia, USA. He is also the editor-in-chief of peer-reviewed journal, Literary Confluence, Global Journal of English and Cultural Studies. He chaired international conferences in New Jersey, USA, and was invited as a resource person in a number of international conferences in India and in Europe. He has more than 20 books to his credit on American, British, and Indian English literature. Beside being known as the Oleander poet and as one of the fiction writers with books published from India and abroad. He has more than 2,000 articles in printed and online media. He is a PhD evaluator of many universities in India. He is facilitated as multilingual poet in International Poetry Conference and nominated as advisor of International Education Excellence Award 2020. So that's quite a long introduction, and you can guess that his merit through it. So I wouldn't waste much of his time and go directly to Dr. Ratan Bhattacharjee. And please proceed, sir. Thank you. Please see his mic is, sir, your microphone is off. Yes, right now. It's okay, sir. Right now it's
okay. Okay. I thank first of all to Astrin Khatun, who has introduced me to so hugely in this morning, becoming so nice for me. And I'm cheered up, in fact, before the talk. I'm in fact warmed up. And I thank Sagar Mohabiddalay, Department of English, and IQAC Department Cell, IQAC Cell. And I congratulate Department of English for organizing this very, very significant and very, very time-based seminar, relevant, topical to the current situation of COVID-19 infection, the pandemic crisis all over the world. And I thank teacher in charge of the college. I am very much happy that even the GB president, Bunkim Babu, is also here to encourage the participants and the speakers and the staff of the college. This is very, very rare. Very few GB presidents have given this kind of time. I am very much happy that Professor Abhishek Mistry, he is one of the very energetic professors of English and very much interested in literature. He has taken all the pains to organize this seminar, and I organize the others who are going to watch this webinar and our talk on this session. It's very, very common that we are now experiencing the theater of the absurd. In real, it's not the artist theater of the absurd, not a drama theater of the absurd. It is a global theater of the absurd that suddenly we are experiencing a changing world, almost a Kafka world, where we are all on a trial and all under the pandemic crisis, as he was talking about the plague in the very beginning of that novel. And what he is telling about that time of crisis, Albert Camus also was talking about this trial, about this time, crisis time of the plague. I'm reading some of the lines from Albert Camus because to understand the situation that is almost like the salt strange islands kind of situation that Matthew Arnold was describing, that we are like the separated islands in the ocean of life, because we are not the no more the holy of the holy. We are going to be the clean of the clean every time, washing our hands every time, washing our palms every time. We are sanitizing. We are almost cleaning the whole world, as if the whole world became very dirty. And suddenly we have been responsible for making it clean from all sides, as if the world has gone for a repair, as if the world is locked all sides. So this is an extraordinary situation, bad or good, that time will tell. Because some positive things become negative, some negative things become positive. Because before this time, we knew that the word negative was negative. But now the negative word has become positive, because if any corona patient gets the report negative, he is very happy. So for the first time, the world is experiencing that the negative has become positive. So this is a kind of extraordinary situation where values are changed, where things are changing, thoughts are changing, mind setup changing. And Albert Camus was describing this kind of situation in these lines. I'm reading these lines for your understanding. What's true of all the evils in the world is true of the plague as well. It helps men to rise above themselves. All the same, when you see the misery it brings, you would need to be madman or a coward or stone blind to give in timely to the plague. Now, this is a picture of the plague. And you know, plague was one of the situation almost comparable to our corona days, the lockdown days. And even in Shakespeare's London, even in Chaucer's London, even in Boccaccio's country, also we saw this kind of lockdown period. Because in Boccaccio's Decameron, we get the young men, group of young men, they were going for quarantine to a village. And today, you know that whenever you are infected, we go to nature for being cured. And nature is now becoming more and more clean. I will go to that chapter later. But now I'm telling you that this kind of situation also prevailed earlier. It is not that the world is watching this situation for the first time. So literature is giving us the pictures again and again of the pandemic situation, of the epidemics, of the endemics that made people in confined to lockdown. And in 1592, when Shakespeare was in London, he was locked down. He was locked in his house because he had to observe this quarantine in London, because that time he had no globe theater activities. He had to take rest in his own house. And that time he wrote Venus Adonis. That time he wrote Rape of Lucrece. And you see the picture of the London town, London city, deserted street, closed shops, dogs running free. These are the pictures of London, city of London, constant ringing of the curfew bells, because people are dying one after the other, and the death number is a heavy toll. And King Lear, Shakespeare was writing this time, best of our time. Ironically, he was mentioning it is the best of our time. That Thomas Dekker was telling, ironically, the wonderful year. The wonderful year because suddenly people are locked in their own house. Even the plot of the dramas that Shakespeare was devising for Romeo and Juliet, for example, the plot was telling that people are not very much allowed to move. And in Romeo and Juliet, Romeo did not get the letter of Juliet because the boy whom she sent was had to be in quarantine, so he could not come in time, and Romeo did not get the letter, so the tragedy occurred. So even in the story pattern also, the corona, the COVID, the plague came as a kind of storyline. Even in Timon of Athens, even in Measure for Measure, you find a picture of plagues, picture of the fever given by Shakespeare. Shakespeare was writing about the plagues. Plagues, your potent and infection fever hip, O Athens, be mourned, becrowned with plagues. So plagues at that time was raging. Why I'm talking about plagues? Because plagues were giving the earliest evidence of kind of corona kind of situation in London, and what the creative people, the creative writers, how they react, how they were creative during this unproductive period, during this lockdown period, how literature creativity was very much done in the leisure period of the great writers. They were imaginative and they were thinking about their own experiences. Because when you are in a lockdown period, when you are suffering from the physical distancing, many are telling that it is a social distancing. But I don't think that this is a social distancing, because we are very, very much connected in society to these days. Earlier, I have not connected many relatives of mine, many friends of mine, many students of mine, many teachers of mine. But now, when I'm in leisure, I am connecting them digitally. I'm connecting them on website, on the social media. So earlier we are very busy about the real life. Now we are no longer busy in real life, but we are now trying to sorry, there's an interruption. The mobile was falling down, that's why. So we are now no longer distanced. We are more one. In fact, the global pandemic has done one very excellent thing to us, that we are very much one. The world has become one. The world has become suddenly united. And united, we are standing in our fight against corona. So fears of death, fears of life have made us united. Love could not make us united. And now this is one of the plus points that corona is doing. So that time also, plague had created this positive thing. That is, people were writing novels, dramas, and poetry for making their time utilized. And when Shakespeare is writing, the dead man's knell is there, scarce asked for, and who, and good men's lives expire before the flowers in their caps, dying or ere the sicken. So sickness, death, all these only united us to fight against the plague. Now I'm coming to this beginning of this kind of pandemics all over the world. Even in the Greek society, the first pandemic mentioned in Western literature was the Iliad. Iliad begins with the first scene. It is plague, wrath. The lines I'm reading from Iliad, where you will find the god's anger that is expressed in terms of plague. This is also another belief that whenever any kind of plague occurs, whenever any pandemic kind of things occur, epidemic occurs, we usually explain it as God's curse. Today, what we will explain, how we will explain, we don't know. But the first pandemic in Western literature that was mentioned in Iliad is mentioned like this: wrath. Sing, goddess of the ruinous wrath of Peleus, son of Achilles, that inflicted woes without number on the Icarian. It began with infection. So infection, plague infection, was the picture that Iliad began with. Naturally, you have to think that from that particular time to 1918, I'm jumping to 1918. Why? Because in 1918, again, there was the swine flu, and the flu, the Spanish flu also occurred, where people died. And Spanish flu actually did not begin in Spain. It began in America and Brazil and other places, even in France. But what happened that time in Spain, the king died from that flu. So after that, it was coming to public. Because that time social media was not that much strong, and people came to know about the death of the king. So when the death of the king occurs because of the flu in Spain, so it was called Spanish flu. It was not actually the originating from Spain, as COVID is originating from Wuhan, China, and President Trump was trying to call it Chinese flu. That kind of thing happened in earlier times also. So the Spanish flu ultimately killed millions of people in Europe and America and other places, in England, in Canada, in other places, in Japan. And now, question is that in 1918, what happens? I am referring to literature of that period, how literature covered that flu, literature covered that pandemic during that time. I will refer to one very important book that is published in 2019, that is Viral Modernism. And there you will find two essays. One is How Pandemic Seeped into Literature. Pandemic Seeping into Literature. Elizabeth Autka, this essay was published in Paris Review, April 2020. Very recent article, very good article, how pandemics seep into literature. And he was describing some of the reasons how plague was causing man's life, what distress, what kind of problems occurred. And, you know, first of all, the one important thing is that man is detached from man. Another thing is the leisure that comes to man's life is not very much productive. But only the creative people, the writers, the poets, they were trying to use this time for using this lockdown period. William Maxwell wrote another essay. It's a very important essay. They Came Like Swallows. And this was published by Columbia University Press, and very much important. He was describing a kind of wasteland situation. And Eliot's Wasteland, Mrs. Dalloway, Virginia Woolf was writing on Being It, and Yeats's poem, The Second Coming. So this kind of apocalyptic kind of thing, picture we get in this essay. Then there is Catherine Ann Porter, the beautiful essay that she wrote, Pale Horse, Pale Rider. Pale horse, pale riders. The very name shows there is a paleness everywhere. And Viral Modernism, you know, how pandemic seep into literature reveals 50 works of fiction and non-fiction. And, you know, Catherine Ann Porter was writing about the 1919, because these writers experienced really that particular plague that was a kind of a plague, the flu. It was also a kind of a disease, pandemic kind of disease, because it was cross-country infection. And they were describing their experiences, how to deal with the flu. The picture of literature is beautiful because there the flea is the protagonist. As we hear here, the coronavirus is the hero. Now he is the hero. Man is no longer the hero. Man is simply a victim. Man is simply a tiny object now. And the tiny virus has become the magnificent hero who is trying to dominate the whole world. Our scientific inventions, our thoughts, our psychology, our physical status, everything is beginning changing. We cannot go outside with our faces open. We have to mask our faces. Masked people, the whole world, the whole globe has become masked. And this picture is given also in this book. And there, flea is the protagonist, as here coronavirus is the protagonist. And question is to survive, survival of the fittest. We don't know whether man will survive this coronavirus attack. Yes, we will. Man can be destroyed, but man cannot be defeated. That is the beautiful line that is given by Hemingway. And we are also thinking about this kind of thing, that Black Death in the 14th century, what it has done. Half of Europe died. 25 million to 70 million people. There is no account, because that time the science, this media, social media and other things were not very strong. So nobody knows how many people actually died, but half of the people of Europe were simply killed, died because of this Spanish flu in 1919. As in the 14th century, Black Death killed half of Europe in Black Death, means plague. Again, record keeping was not very good, and 500 million people were affected, and pandemics crossed national boundaries. So in lockdown period, not only the readers, not only the writers write the books, there are also readers who are also reading the books. What kind of books we can read? For example, in lockdown period, you can read Ulysses, long book. Usually we don't have time to read the long books. You can read long books of James Joyce, Ulysses. You can read War and Peace of Tolstoy. You can read Tom Jones, Henry Fieldings. You can read A Place of Greater Safety, Hilary Mantel's. You can read Middlemarch by George Eliot. They're long books. So long leisure is required for reading long books. So sometimes writers write, and people, when they die from pandemic, more than they die from the war. Because war killed many people, but pandemic is killing. Because there is a difference between the killing by war and killing by pandemic. Killing by pandemic means it is uncertain. Nobody knows when it is coming from, where it is coming from. Nobody knows. Because, in the 1919 flu, President Wilson was contracting flu, and President Wilson had this infection. As recently, our beloved president, former president Pranab Mukherjee is also infected, and he died very recently. So this kind of thing happened unwarrantedly. COVID can attack us. War is not coming like that. War is a preparation. It occurs after a prolonged preparation, and people can get some time for preparation. But in COVID, you do not find time, because it is affecting your respiratory system. Anytime death can come. It is an uncertain call of death. And the high mortality rate that started is now, thanks God, that we have somehow controlled in our own state and also in the other states. India is more and more much fighting against COVID-19 by practicing social distancing and other things. Now, question is that when you are writing a fiction and when you are writing a science fiction, have some unusual link with the pandemics. All over the world, whenever there is some pandemics, there is some epidemic, then science fiction came to highlight, focus pandemics. You will be surprised that our coronavirus pandemic was predicted in a book in 1981. This is in 2020 and 2019 Wuhan spread this coronavirus. But Dean Koontz, 1981, science fiction, this novel is called The Eyes of Darkness. The Eyes of Darkness, Dean Koontz, 1981. This book predicted the coronavirus pandemic with uncanny precision. This is really surprising that one writer predicted coronavirus 1981. 1981 means almost 40 years earlier, he predicted this coronavirus in the book, The Eye of Darkness. Science fiction is prediction. Science fiction is doing this. The unusual link of science fiction with the pandemics. Then Margaret Atwood, 2003, she wrote this novel, Oryx and the Crick. This refers to the time there was lot of dismay and not enough ambulance. As today's situation, it is almost today's situation. 2003, she was imagining that there is no adequate number of ambulance. And because there is no adequate number of ambulance, means today also patients, when they are dying, there is no adequate number of ambulance available. Although the government is trying, state government is trying very much for the recovery and the treatment of the COVID patients. But this kind of thing happened. Sometimes that the patients are not given that kind of ready service, emergency service, and ambulance was not available. So writers are concerned about the problems that prevail during the pandemic times. I am talking about the bubonic plague, and in France, for example, there was the picturization in drama about the bubonic plague, Artaud's novel, Artaud's drama, and Theatre of the Absurd was trying to produce this apocalypse in pandemic literature. Vocabularies change, narratives change, myths change, and the journalistic non-fiction literature, TV, films, everyone is now changing. How it is changing? I'm just giving one example. Earlier, the housewives who were enjoying the TV serials, now they are no more interested in the news, the doctor's discussion, the hygiene discussion. These are very much prominently done on the TV screen. And the housewives who are very much addicted to the TV serials, they are stopping those channels. They are now listening to what should be done during the pandemic crisis. Especially the old people, their eyes are now glued to the TV screen because their habits have been changing. All these are picturized in stories, in fiction, in poems. And one poem is very, very viral on the social media, and it was written by one Scottish bishop. He was writing about the plus points, about the positive points of coronavirus. What is happening, finally, the corona has come, it is true. People cannot meet people. The doors are closed. And he was watching also at the same time that nature is becoming more green. Nature is becoming greener. And global warming has reduced to a certain commendable extent, because now the migratory birds which have left us now started coming back. The sky, which is very much smoke-filled, is now becoming clear. So there is this poem is describing that nature is becoming more and more bright, and the uncontrollable forces of coronavirus cannot destroy our beautiful nature. Human survival is more ensured if the global warming is reduced. So this poem was highlighting, focusing about this positive point of corona. So sometimes what is writers are doing? Writers are trying to cheer up the mankind, cheer up people, cheer up human beings, cheer up the patients that yes, corona has come. We are facing it. We are fighting with it. But every pandemic, it starts as a mystery. From plague, from flu, to till this day, everything comes as a mysterious thing. In the beginning, there is some fear, but gradually we overcome the fears. The apprehensions, the fears, they are gradually reduced. What is there? The challenges. challenges by men, how men are challenging. For example, people have now listened, people have now learned how to cope up with COVID-19. You see, in the marketplace, people are standing on the queue by maintaining physical distancing. Some people are not maintaining it, but there are strict rules for maintaining it. So sometimes we feel that in the medical shop or other places where the sanitizers and those medicines are available, people are keep standing on the queue patiently. So we are learning patience. Patience is very important in a time of crisis. Corona has taught us patience. Now people are keeping gap and people are waiting for two persons coming out of the bank. Then he will enter the bank. Earlier it was unthinkable. Hundreds of people are entering the bank. Hundreds of people are entering the shops. Hundreds of people are thronging in the marketplace. Now another thing. In Canterbury Tales, Chaucer was describing the pilgrims. Two pilgrims, they were infected with plague. And what they did not tell it to others, but they were infected, almost on the verge of death. So one doctor came, and the doctor, he told that he had some remedy to cure the plague infected patients. But actually, he was not a doctor, he was a quack. So he was making money, he was making profit by giving the false medicine, false prescriptions for the patients of the plague. This situation can be compared to our situation. Here also, we find every day this or that person is inventing this or that medicine. Very recently, we had a news that some people are drinking cow urine from near Dunlop, so that some others are taking even cow dung. So this kind of thing also is happening. And some are taking ginger tea, some are taking lemon tea, some are taking other remedies, some are doing yogas, some are doing other things, prescribing things, as if they know how to deal with corona. Question is, nobody is very much sure about what vaccine is coming out. Every day we find that some kind of news is coming to us that this vaccine is invented. India is trying with 3 vaccines. America is trying with 2 vaccines. Russia already started the trial of vaccines. So these kind of things will happen in every age. In Chaucer's time, it happened in Canterbury Tales. It happens even in Kolkata, even in India, even in England, even in America, even in Japan, even in China. China is administering vaccine without trial. So these things are the subjects, these things are the areas where the writers, the poets, the people who are creative, they can write things. Now serials, TV serials, they are trying to introduce some of the corona kind of stories, corona-based stories. And the actors, they are wearing masks when they are singing, they are talking. Even in the studio, it is very much very interesting to see the people who are in the studio and nobody is there, only he is talking, he is using a mask. For example, I am talking now, I am not using the mask. So this kind of precaution is being taken by the people when they are going to interact with people. Even in the serials, and for a long time the studios were closed, and unemployment, and especially of the TV artists, all these people, and unemployment of the poor people in the village area, rural areas, where the migrant workers, they have returned home, losing their children, losing their wives on the road. Sometimes they died on the road. This kind of journey was also described in many novels of earlier times. And science fictions are giving us this kind of pictures. And I told you about Dean Koontz, 1981, The Eyes of Darkness. And Arthur C. Clarke, he was describing, using that Toynbee's quotation. Toynbee said that is unification of the world. Unification of the world, the globality of the world. Globality of the world is possible now, because now whatever President Trump is doing, he is not giving any money to the WHO because of their indulgence given to China. So maybe justified, may not be justified. That is not the question. Question is that sometimes the globality is affected by this kind of thing when you stop the grants to the medical help to the people. So sometimes this happened, but this should be coming in our literature, and literature should come when, as Jacques Derrida was telling, that language failed art ought. So he was using the drama, he was using the theater. When language fails to depict the situation, we use the theater, we use the stature. Because iconoclasm must be there. You have to break the situation that was never there. It is an unforeseen situation. It should be recorded in literature. I'm very happy to tell you that one of my book that is on Corona stories, on lockdown days, I was writing as a South Asian. It is a response to from a South Asian response. It is going to be published from USA, publisher from Bloomington. It will be published very soon. The Corona stories, where I was using the images, the characters, where the people are infected with Corona, and how the old people, children, and especially the physically handicapped people, they are suffering during the coronavirus infection, the COVID-19 days. I was also expecting the readers, the writers, they will be thinking of books, writing on the tribal people, the poor people, the marginalized people who are suffering, who are not getting their money for their livelihood, and how they are suffering. These kind of pictures should be coming in the Corona literature. So this is also a change, a transformation of literature also, not only of our life, because life is reflected in literature. Literature is the mirror to life. Naturally, what you find in everyday life will be reflected in literature. So there are writers who are sharing their experiences in lockdown period. I'm giving you one such book, that is Tayari Jones, author. She is the author of 5 novels, and she got the Women Prize, 4th prize in 2019 for fiction. And she wrote one book, very important book, Silver Sparrow. There she was telling one very important thing, that plague of racism overlaps with global pandemic. This is very important. When you are suffering from COVID-19, you have seen John Floyd. He was he was killed so mercilessly in America. But so on the one hand, you are fighting the racism, you are fighting with COVID. Again, there is the Amartya Sen's telling that people are dying more from hunger than from COVID. So sometimes this is happening. This is also another kind of literature that is coming out, where literature is showing that people are dying from hunger more than from COVID. So COVID is a killer. It is true. COVID is a kind of villain to us. But at the same time, COVID also makes us aware that how we can fight, how we can be taking care, how we can keep ourselves safe against the other villains also. If you know to fight, how to fight with a villain, you know how to fight with other villains also. Emily Perkins in New Zealand, she was also writing one very important book, The Forests. New Zealand, she is telling that we are a small enough country that the prospect of mass death feels terrifyingly personal. New Zealand is COVID-free for 24 days. And she was writing about that period. And The Forests, not her real name, and other stories, another book she wrote. But this is a kind of personal experience, where COVID's experience is personalized, and writers writing about their personal stories. Autobiographical story is very important, especially when you are talking about the marginalized people. And, there was the moment, any tribal. I have visited as resource person to some university in Jammu, where I was talking about the fourth world literature. And fourth world literature means where the third world of the third world means they are marginalized even in the third world, like Mahashara Devi's, those Adivasi people who were living in the margins of the country and who are not even non-scheduled tribes. You are talking about the scheduled tribes, but scheduled caste, but they are non-scheduled, means they are not mentioned anywhere in the schedule. These kind of people also suffer. So those people are, I was meeting, international conference was there, and I was going there. I met one poet. He was a Dogri poet. He told me that the marginalized people, they have no written literature. They have oral literature. Means they talk, they speak to you. So when you go to know about their experiences, about their sufferings, you have to meet them, you have to interview them, and sometimes they are very afraid to give you the exact picture of their sufferings because they are afraid of the police, they are afraid of the administration. They, in a hush-hush atmosphere, they keep themselves and they do not reveal their actual sufferings. So you have to encourage them to tell what they are suffering from. So in COVID period, if you go to any tribal area, if you're in a marginalized area, then you see that you can get enough elements of oral literature. And oral literature means they will tell you their experiences. And this is happening in the very beginning when the Dalit literature was coming. Dalit literature was mostly oral, and this is also happening during this COVID period. Many people who are not able to describe their sufferings, describe their affliction, they are coming. And every day, as Natalia Borges Polesso of Brazil told it beautifully. She told that every day we wake up with a hole in our chest. I told you that COVID is a very uncertain kind of disease. When you talk of tuberculosis, when you talk of other diseases, they are genetic sometimes. They are sometimes infectious in a different way. Genetic means family-wise you will be getting this asthma, TB, tuberculosis. These are coming in that way. But COVID is not genetic. COVID is coming suddenly. And the moment it comes, the moment you are infected, your respiratory system is totally collapsed. So this is a sudden killer. This is a killer that comes to you almost without any notice. And another aspect is coming out in literature. Earlier, you have to know, in India, I'm talking, that some cholera, monosha, and jal bashant means chicken pox and all this. So the smallpox, these are sometimes very much epidemic kind of disease. Malaria, epidemic kind of disease. But these were having some goddess. We think of some goddess, Shitala and Monosha, and this kind of Olai Chundi, these kind of local goddesses are coming. And these local goddesses, they are worshipped. I don't know whether any COVID goddess has come out. So we don't know. We are now doing it, worshipping, because India is a country of rumors. And rumors spread very fast, as Orwell was talking about it in Shooting an Elephant, that rumors spread in India very fast. And sometimes it happens that we worship goddess to make us cured. And literatures can play a big role by developing our literary consciousness, rather than this superstitious condition, superstitious situation, and not to prevail in India. People should be hygienic. It is very good that people have learned washing their hands. People have learned sanitizing their houses. People have learned to be clean. People have learned to keep physical distancing in a very, very warm way, in a very, very intimate way. That is very important. Because pandemics cross the boundaries. It is reaching out. And it is one of the very humorously told that pandemics is very, very VIP kind of virus, because if you do not welcome it, it will not attack you. It will not come to you. Unless you invite COVID, it will not come to your house. So this is a kind of VIP virus. And, you know, we are reaching this picture every day in literature. So today we need one Chaucer, we need one Boccaccio, we need one Shakespeare, we need one Dean Koontz to write about Corona literature. And the books that you can read during this period about the nature, because nature has many, many colors. For the COVID-19 situation, the pandemic situation, that as long as it prevails, nature is also very important. You can write on nature, how it is changing, how the Siberian birds are coming back to Alipur Zoo, how they are coming back to different countries. We have seen rare species in the Antarctic region where the penguins were lost, and now they are coming back. And rare birds, rare species, they are found. So this is also another thing. After SARS, after MERS, this is another, the seventh, you can say, seventh respiratory syndrome that has attacked the world, easily infected, person to person. And literature is socialized because of the contagious nature. Global warming that may cause, you know, Amazon was burning only very recently. Wild animals were hunted, and, you know, nature was devastated. Suddenly, nature is peaceful. Now, suddenly, people are getting that peace in their outside nature. So, some writers have written on the colors of nature. I am reading one book, I am mentioning one book, Alison Hawthorne's Deming. She was mentioning about 30 writers who contributed to colors of nature. Pilgrim and Tinker, Crick, written by Annie Dillard. Blue Ridge Mountains, talking about the mountains, how the colors changed. Another very important book, this is written, The Solace of Open Spaces, because now open spaces are open, nobody is going. I'm telling you that open nature is very much important for the children. You know, children are very much digitalized. Their online education and other things are coming. So children, they cannot go to the parks, they cannot go to out nature to play. They are very much confined within their house to play PUBG, to play games, to play digital games, and to do online class. This is something, a kind of pressure for the child mind. And children have to go out. Children should be habituated to this kind of situation. But this is also painful. And I am finishing my lecture on COVID situation, that pictures of the animals, especially the pet dogs, the street dogs, they are now very much hungry outside, as Shakespeare is talking about them in Measure for Measure, in Timon of Athens, that the lonely streets, the hungry dogs, hungry cats. So this is also very painful situation for the animals. Nobody is there. Sometimes one apprehension was there that, as in China, the dogs can be the carrier of the virus, but this apprehension is now no longer there. Animals cannot spread COVID virus. So still, the dogs and the cats, they are not allowed to enter the house. So this is also very much a bad situation for the dogs. So tribal peoples, rich people, middle class people, migrant laborers, children, old men, all sections of the society are suffering because of this contagious disease. This is very much highly contagious. Even if you touch, even if your breath can reach another, it is contagious. So this kind of thing is creating a different kind of situation, extraordinary kind of situation. More than 2 crores of people infected all over the world. Good news is that they are almost 80%, 70% have been cured. So we have learned that one day is not very much far away, that day, that we will be coping with the COVID virus. And again, another book I'm referring to, that is Robin Wall Kimmerer he was writing the book Braiding Sweet Grass. Blue sky, sweet grass, chirping birds. These are the final gains that we have for our globe, for our earth. This planet will be again green. This planet will again be pulsated with lively sensations and physical distancing, which is now a habit. This is another point made by one writer in one of his writings. That is, he told very beautifully, that is, what we had been, we may not be again. The world that we have seen will no longer come back. It is a new world, it is a new generation, it is the new people that we will be living with, who will be wearing mask, who will be keeping physical distancing, who will be digitally very strong, who will be very much careful about the hygienic cleanness, about sanitization, about keeping physical distancing, not social distancing. And finally, as Arnold Toynbee said, the unification of the world. That is the last message, that is the best message of COVID pandemic period. The globality, oneness of the world will celebrate, at Arthur C. Clarke referred to, single planetary society. Thank you very much for being with me. And literature is positive. Literature never fails us. Literature makes us happy, courageous, and hopeful of the future. The sensation that has changed, the past that we have left, the present that we are living, and the future that we are hoping for. It is not a hope against hope. It is a real hope that one day this single planetary society will forget fighting, will forget warring, will be trying for survival, will be trying for existence. Thank you very much, organizers. And
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
namaskar.
Sir, your microphone is off. Yeah, you're not audible, sir. Your microphone is off. Please look into that.
So thank you for your wonderful deliberation. Your lecture actually reminded me of those days when I used to sit in our college and you used to give us lecture. So that memory just revitalized once again. So it was very the lecture was excellent, sir, and I'm sure everybody has been much enriched by it. And if you see the comment box, if you see the chat box, YouTube chat box, you can understand how enthusiastic the audience were. So, sir,
My regards.
at the same time, I would like to inform you, the president of our governing body and our teacher in charge, both of them called me and they told me that they have liked your lecture very much. Especially our MLA Gomkim Chandra Hajra, he has appreciated your lecture very much. So I just wanted to convey this
My
message
thanks.
to you.
My thanks. My thanks. My
Yes.
gratefulness to them. Yeah.
Okay. Sir, so now I'm going to take some questions. There are many questions in the chat box, but I'm going to take few of them actually. Okay.
Yeah.
So the first question. Yeah. So you're talking about. Yes, sir. I'm going to present those questions because they will not be there in this StreamYard platform. So you were talking about the unification of the world, the oneness that we expect is going to be happen in future. But don't you think? And there is a question. This question is from Sarfraz Nawab. He is a PhD scholar, and he has asked whether don't you think that this pandemic has actually created a new kind of untouchability, like
Exactly. It is not
and
untouchability.
and
It is not untouchability in the sense that Indians people know, because India and people mean very negatively the word untouchability. And Gandhiji was fighting against untouchability. So it is not that untouchability. It is a kind of thing, hygienic awareness. This untouchability is positive. The moment, actually what happened in India, if you read Benares of Aldous Huxley, Aldous Huxley was giving a beautiful picture of the dirty people, what kind of dirty practices they had in the crowdy Benares during the solar eclipse. And they are taking food from the dust, they are doing everything from that, and all one almost flocking together. So many people are overcrowded on the Ganga Ghat, and some are spitting on the water, others is drinking it, Ma Ganga, Ma Ganga. So that kind of thing is doing. I think that untouchability is not very good. That touchability is not very good. So this is untouchability means we are aware of the dangers of the unclean situation, of the contagious disease. The moment you are becoming clean hygienically, and hygienic sense is heightened in Indian people. So I think this is very, very important. Again, another thing that is all over the world, globally, India is regarded as a very unclean kind of society community who are not maintaining the hygienic standards even in their home, even outside, even in the marketplaces. So now people are learning the standard kind of hygienic situations, and they're using sanitization, they're using masks, they are talking no longer. We are biting our fingers, for example. Many have a habit of biting fingers during the talking. So that habit also stopped. So I think this kind of thing, small habits we have changed. And whenever you are giving your eyes, fingers on your eyes, that is also stopped. So I think we'll be living more and more, and our longevity will be more.
Yes, sir. What you're saying is like you're talking about the positive side of this untouchable
Yeah.
culture. But at
Yeah.
the same time, we see in news channels that infected people, how they are being detested by those who want to maintain a distance from those infected people, and this for this reason, many people have suffered because of this detestation. So, would you like to comment on that?
Yeah, that is one writer beautifully wrote it. That is, we are now living in a society of doubts. Means
Yes.
never before in human history man has doubted man like this.
Mhm.
Man is doubting man. Even husband is
Yes.
doubtful of the wife, son is doubtful of the father, brother is doubtful of the brother, because he is not very sure whether he has got the thermal checkup, whether he is running fever. Even if you sneeze, your neighbors are opening, not they're opening the windows, and they're immediately calling the quarantine center that this man is sneezing inside his house. So even if you have normal cough, normal sneezing, normal fever, even then you are doubted. So this is very unkind of many, that when we detest people that in a quarantine center, when anybody has gone to quarantine center as if he has gone to a jail, as if he has gone to a prison. Earlier, when a person is sent to prison, he is fired from the service, like that. So if you say, there is a very humorous story one person has written recently in one newspaper, that one child, he was not very interested in going to school. So what he did, earlier his mother was trying to send him to school. Now what he did, he smiled and he went with his mother to the school gate. And at the gate, he suddenly started coughing. And the Darwan told, don't come to school. So he again smiled and come back home, and he has no coughing at all. So he used this coughing for not going to school. Okay, so this kind of thing also happening because some kind of comic thing, some kind of tragic things, these are all side products, they're byproducts of the total disease. So this is not the total situation. Totality of the situation is not like that. Many people are serving people when you are infected with corona. Then those doctors, nurses, I have not mentioned them. They are the COVID fighters. They have left their home. And my one sister, she is a doctor in emergency center of COVID, and she goes to the COVID center for 15 days, leaving her small child at home, and she does not come back. So she is also taking care of
happening.
Yeah, so she's not having this kind of thing. So she's also untouchable at her home. She's not going home because she thinks that she is becoming herself untouchable. So doctors themselves are untouchable, and so this untouchable has many dimensions, many meanings. So I think please do not explain this untouchable in only one sense. It is not a one meaning. It has many meanings. So I think take this word in a different way, and those who are unkind to the COVID patients, I think they should be gracious. It is very simple. They should be gracious.
Yes, I think a proper review of this entire, this new normal culture should be done. A review is necessary, and the discussions through webinars. This kind of programs are very essential to educate and to make people understand the real situation.
I have got one proposal from one university, that is they will be introducing corona literature. Corona literature means coronavirus literature is coming in future days in your syllabus. So the moment you bring coronavirus literature, then it will be studied. Wherever any person writes stories, any person writes novels, books, essays, articles, and research work done on coronavirus. So I think it will be reviewed in many levels, not only one level, not only in webinar discussion. It will be discussed in TV channels, it will be discussed in films. Many films will be done on plague. On plague, Albert Camus wrote a novel, a famous novel, The Plague itself. Okay. So
yes.
we are almost all on trial, we are all trying. We don't know when we will be released. There is a trial forever, going on and going on. So the trial situation. So I think this kind of thing will go on, and the review will be broad-based. It will be globally done. It will be research work. It will be academic. It will be poetic. It will be fictional. It will be dramatic. It will be theatrical. So different versions of review will come up in future days. I think that is also another dimension of literature that we are getting from coronavirus literature.
Yes, sir. So we have another question, and this question is very interesting. It says, do you think that the tribal people has been less affected? Have they been less affected by this coronavirus pandemic?
Yes, I told you.
What is your comment? What is your comment on their iron bond, on their bond with nature? How their bond with nature is different from the people who live in city. So what is your comment on this area?
Yeah, it is very recently we have got one news, that is North 24 Pargana has toppled Kolkata by its number of deaths. The question is that one is suburban area, one is city. My question is not this. My answer is not this. I'm just giving one example. That when you are in nature, then obviously the houses are distant. In Kolkata, for example, in a city or a suburban city, what is happening? Houses are very close, apartments very close, markets very close. People are very close associations. But in nature, in the rural areas, especially in the tribal areas, hilly regions, houses are very distantly located. So people do not mix with people so easily, so densely crowded places. Except their marketplaces, they are not meeting at all. They are living in their own houses, and in the open fields, people are working. So I think in nature, there is a kind of distance. There is a scope for distancing. Physical distancing comes automatically in the areas where the tribal people live. But the social functions, for example, which are now banned, which are now almost stopped for a corona period, social functions, social events, markets. So if these are closed, I think rural areas are less affected. That is the reason. Secondly, I told you in my lecture that many writers have shown that coronavirus has made nature very, very free, greener, brighter. So naturally, because of the city pollution has been coming down, the rural areas also becoming more and more free. So our cautiousness, our taking care of hygiene is indirectly helping the hilly regions and the rural areas. I think the pollution is not going there. The global warming is reduced. So naturally, everywhere the tribal people. But problem in tribal areas is not that. Problem in tribal areas during the COVID is their hunger. People are dying from hunger. People are dying from unemployment. That is more important than the COVID situation. So although they do not die from COVID, they are dying from hunger. They are dying from unemployment. It is very good that state government is trying to put some money in their bank account, and they are at least getting some money. And doctors are also visiting the rural center. Now people are aware. Awareness camp is being organized in the tribal areas.
Right, sir. So another question is like, do you think that the issues of climate change should be given more focus, especially what has happened in this
Exactly.
in this year 2020, and what is the relation,
Exactly.
do you think, between pandemic, this particular pandemic, and climate change? What is the
Yes,
relation between these two?
your webinar is very, very interesting because of this connection of literature, climate change, and COVID. Because, climate change, already the global warming, I told you that many writers have described that global warming has been reduced to an excellent proportion. And people cannot even imagine that the rare species of bird, that they are coming back to the earth, and we are having a greener world in future. So I think Amazon fire that occurred in the past, the African fires, forests had bonfire in the past, may not occur so frequently when this will continue. COVID will not be there. COVID will be finally over because we will be finding antibodies, we will be finding vaccines. Finally, we will be knowing how to live with coronavirus. But the gain that is living as a residue, as a remnant of it that is remaining, that COVID ultimately leaves us with one great treasure, that is our green nature. And the climate change will automatically occur because there will be a brighter climate, a better climate for mankind to survive. So for our survival, some positive news also it is left for us. I think that is why COVID is not totally negative. It is also positive in this sense, because it makes us aware. Unless you have your enemies, you cannot be prospering. You need some enemy to prosper. You may need some friend to encourage, but without enemy, you cannot prosper very high.
Yes,
So as the climate was almost deteriorating, as the environmental change was going worse and worse every day, bonfire of Amazon, and in Dehing Patkai in Assam, some mines, there were coal mines, and fire was sprouting there. So nature was at jeopardy, at very risk. But now, because people are confining themselves to house, people are helping the climate to improve. I think in future we shall see a better earth, better planet, a very greener planet, and I think that will be helping us in some way. So this is an indirect influence of COVID, positive indirect influence.
Positive side of it.
Positive side.
And sir, another question, so another question is, you were talking about the literary representations that I mean the literary representations of pandemic and climate issues. Now, my question is that do you think that literature, fictional literature mostly, can be taken or are taken seriously as sociological documents, especially in the field of research?
Of course, there is no doubt about that, what you have said, because literature is not disconnected from society. Literature comes from the personal experience. then it gradually filters into the social consciousness of the people. Because the
Yes.
moment you read Iliad, for example, Iliad, it started as a religious experience, as a fight of the goddess and the man. But it began with the picture of plague. So now we read Iliad not as a religious document of the Greece people. We read it as a sociological document. So today you are experiencing some personal things, but gradually, person to person, it will be becoming a social experience. So, and you see the books that you are reading today, another very positive side, that not only the writers, coronavirus lockdown period has created a readership. Today, you are organizing a webinar. You imagine 1 year earlier, if you organize this webinar, 10 persons
Nobody would
would
have
not join.
participated. Yes, yes.
Today, 200 joined, and I posted in the Facebook. Then many people told me that why didn't you post it earlier? Already 200 crossed and it is closed. I cannot join. So I
Yes, I saw
told
that.
that, yeah. So this is the kind of thing that today a great readership is coming out to read the corona literature. So naturally, this is a sociological side that is coming. That is, people demand this kind of literature. People want to know your experience, what you are doing, what I am doing, and how I can share your experience. So every day, if you just listen to the phone calls at your home, in your college, in your other places, people will talk, discuss. What are you doing? Hello, in the morning. What are you cooking? Your husband went to market. Hello, Dada is okay. He is now 60, over 60. He's well. One person died. Did he die of COVID in your area, or he died from any other disease? Acha, why one ambulance came to your locality? So people are very much aware, and this is called sociological bias of literature, because society is now connecting it with climate, with environment, with their own house. So our house is no longer a house. Now our walls, they also hear. Walls now can hear. So you are in the walls, but walls can hear and hear your voice. And the moment walls hear, you are socialized.
Yes, sir. So thank you very much, sir, for managing your time from your busy schedule, sir. And I wish and I believe that you will also give your consent if we invite you for our future classes and
I feel very much privileged. I feel
from
very
our
much
college.
honored. And I see Dr. Ayaparaja has joined. Thank you, Ayaparaja. How are you?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Yes,
Thank you
he
so
has
much,
already
sir.
joined.
Thank you.
So I am giving
Good
you
afternoon, sir.
the torch to you to bear it.
Sure,
And
sir. Sure.
continue. You are the younger generation of people, and you are a great social activist also. He's also a great social activist. So last question that you made to me, you ask Dr. Raja, he will give you the
Okay.
right answer for it, because he is the social activist, he's
Okay.
a great academician, great researcher. I'm very
Thank
happy
you,
to be on the
sir.
same dais. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for your support always.
Yeah, of course, always. And I
You,
thank Sagar Mahavidyalay and your MLA Sahib and your teacher in charge and others, and Nasreen and Abhijek. You know that I am very much
Thank
happy
you,
with
sir.
all these academic exercises, and you are carrying actually my mission. We are old. We are
Yes,
now
absolutely.
transferring it. Our lamp you are carrying, and I'm very happy that you take it. Thank you.
So it is my pleasure, sir, that you have given your consent and you have always supported me for. You have been my support for quite a long time, actually, and I am very happy, sir. And I thank
Actually,
you a lot, sir.
many students do not recognize that teacher. So I did not mention
It
that you
should
had
not
been
be
my.
that way.
I did not mention that you had been my student, but because you are a professor now, you are the head of the department now. But you mentioned it yourself. That's why I am very happy, and my blessings, my happiness, unbounded, that one of my students have come out to fight, condemn this COVID pandemic in literature, in climate change, by inviting everyone to this great deliberation, and great speakers like Dr. Raja and Dr. Sobu Sarkar to this conference. Thank you so much. My dear
Thank you, sir.
namaskar.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. So we now move to our second speaker. Our second speaker is Dr. Ayappa Raja Satyanathan. He is an associate professor of English, Annamalai University, Chidambaram. He has been teaching English to the postgraduate students and guiding research scholars of MPhil and PhD. His area of specialization is Indian writing in English. He has successfully guided 10 PhD and 24 MPhil candidates. He has published 74 research papers and 3 books. He has presented 60 research papers at various national and international conferences. Welcome, Dr. Raja.
Thank you so much, sir, for having given me the opportunity to take part in this national webinar. I'm immensely happy. First of all, sir, can you hear me?
Yes. The title of Dr. Raja's paper is Planet and Pestilence in Poetry. So, sir, you proceed with your paper, sir. The stage is all yours.
Yes, slides are ready.
Yeah. Can you run the slide from your side?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I think it's taking some time.
Yes, sir, it is on.
Okay, I think it's there. Yeah.
Does it appear, sir?
No, it's not visible actually. Shonja sir, can you see what is happening? Shonja sir, can you hear me? Yes, I think your screen is being shared now.
Yes, sir, it is coming. Does it appear, sir?
Yes. Just maximize the screen.
Sure.
Okay, sir. You go ahead with your presentation.
Yes, sir.
Have a nice
Now it
presentation,
comes,
sir.
Thank you.
Yes,
Thank you so much, sir. First of all, I thank the authorities of Sagar Mahavidyalaya and the Professor Mr. Abhishek Mistry and the Professor Asrin Cartoon, the convener and the joint convener of this grand one-day national webinar, and my respected friend, Professor Ratan Da, and the dear participants, learned teaching fraternity, and my dear students, very good afternoon to one and all. I'm immensely happy to meet all of you to discuss some ideas related to planet and the pestilence in poetry. Planet and the pestilence in poetry. All of us, we know we have only one planet on this. We have only one planet to live So it's a duty of every one of us to preserve nature, to preserve our planet. 2000 years ago, in the ancient Tamil literary work, Ahananuru, a poet named Kurungudi Marudana, writes a poem. In that poem, he begins with Mullai Vaindunai. In Tamil, he begins the poem. In that poem, he presents the idea the lover returns to meet his beloved, his wife, his beloved wife, after completing his job. When he returns quickly to meet his beloved wife after some months, after some years, and he is in hurry to meet his beloved wife. The lover, the husband, loving husband, wants to meet his wife after doing the job, and he comes back in a horse-drawn vehicle. 2000 years ago, this was recorded by the poet Kurungudi Marudana in his work called Agananuru. Now the lover returns, the beloved husband returns to meet his beloved. When he comes in a chariot so quickly, horse-drawn chariot so quickly, the harness bells of the chariot, the horses, that the bells make a loud noise. The bells make a loud noise. Then he thinks that tying of the clappers of the bells, and he asks his charioteer to tie the clappers of the bells. The reason of doing this is, and he does not like to disturb the small insects which take honey in the flowers in the forest. And he does not like to disturb the creatures, the simple insects which take honey in the flowers, If the clatters of the bells are not tied, then they create much noise. That noise that might disturb these small insects which take honey and involve in lovemaking in the flowers. So 2000 years ago, this aspect is recorded in a Tamil ancient literary work, Ahananuru. It tells that how in ancient India, people, they take care of nature. Though the creatures are very small insects, honey-sucking insects, and they take honey from these flowers. The lover who returns to meet his beloved after doing his job away from the place, when he comes back in his chariot that is drawn by the horses, he feels that the harness bells of the horses that can disturb the small creatures which suck honey from the flowers. It shows how in ancient India, people, they respect nature. They love nature. Even for the small creatures, they get their due place in the hearts of our ancient people. Unfortunately, today that we find that mankind slowly destructs the resources of nature. People, they destroy nature. They desecrate nature. In the name of development, in the name of bringing industries, economic development, as observed by our previous speaker, respected Professor Ratan Dar, how in the name of development, the resources of nature are destroyed by modern people, and we come to know. So it is a sad part of modern life of man. So nature, in response to that, it also has some effects. Effects like the global warming and the rise of sea level, So mankind now faces the threat due to the actions, the evil deeds which man does to nature. We have only one planet to live on this world. We have only one planet to live, rather. So it's a responsibility of us to preserve nature. It's a duty of every one of us to preserve nature. The title of my presentation is Planet and Pestilence in Poetry. So the study which I take up today to present for this webinar, in this study I have taken up Indian English poets exclusively for analysis. The poets like A.K. Ramanujan, R. Parthasarathi, Manjeri S. Iswaran, Jeev Patel, Syed Amanuddin, K.K. N. Darwala, and Arulanand. I take the poems of these poets to bring out the eco-consciousness of them. The eco-consciousness of them, the love of nature of them. All these poets, they insist man should preserve nature. People should preserve nature. People should not desecrate nature or destroy nature. Apart from that, poets like Darwala as well as J. Arulanand, they bring out how the pandemic like cholera and COVID-19, which we experience at present, affect people in general. The sufferings of people, the anxiety, the fear of people, all are very much conspicuous in their poems. So it's a duty of mankind to protect the flora and the fauna, fish, river, sea, land, and so on. It's a responsibility of every one of us to take care of the aspects of nature, the resources of nature. Today, I have taken up the poems such as A.K. Ramanujan's Breaded Fish, R. Parthasarathis River Once, Manjeri S. Iswaran's The Neem is a Lady, Jeev Patel's On Killing a Tree, Syed Amanuddin's Mother Earth, K.K. N. Darwala's Pestilence, and Pestilence in 19th century Calcutta, and Arulanand's Lockdown Lunacies and locked and down in lockdowns. So I have taken up these poems for analysis to bring out their concern for nature, their concern to preserve nature, to preserve the planet. Not only that, the poets Daruvala and Arulanand, they highlight the terrible effects of epidemic on human beings. And they highlight, they treat the terrible effects of the pandemic like cholera and COVID-19 on human beings. And we are going to discuss their poems and their ideas in this session. So at first, when we take up A.K. Ramanujan's breaded fish, in this poem, he has made a speaker, a persona, to express his contempt for killing of animals for eating. Killing of animals for eating or killing animals for meat is considered to be not at all an act of good. As we already saw, the origin of the COVID-19 itself is evidence to prove that statement. The medical fraternity, the medical practitioners, the doctors, the experts, they say the coronavirus that originates from the Wuhan wet market, in China. So from there, that people, they just assemble to get the meat of different sorts of creatures, different sorts of animals, and they in fact get infected from the bats or the snakes. So COVID-19 is originated, it is believed that it is originated from the Wuhan wet market in China. So here, A.K. Ramanujan in Breaded Fish has made a speaker to speak against eating of fish or meat of any other animal. We find that he advocates veganism, and the speaker has rejected the roasted fish which is offered to him by a friend. The speaker says, I quote, "Specially for me, she has some breaded fish, even thrust a blunt-headed, smelt into my mouth, and looked hurt when I could neither sit nor eat," unquote. The speaker of this poem does not like to eat the breaded fish, the roasted fish, and he is against of eating it. So he expresses his dislike for eating the flesh of animals, and he prefers a dish prepared by vegetables. Hence, he expresses his contempt for killing animals for meat, and he is against it. So he loves his fellow creatures, which have the same right to exist on the world like him. We have to remember, all the creatures are the children of earth, the children of Mother Earth. So man should not feel that he is a superior creature. Mankind should not feel that the superiority complex, that they are the proprietors of this land. They are the proprietors of this earth. Man should not misunderstand this, misconstrue this, misunderstand this. When we speak this, immediately we remind of the words of Parasara, the great saint who speaks to his disciple Maitreya. In Vishnu Purana, we find that Parasara speaks to Maitreya. In that speech, Parasara has made it clear. The earth certainly does not belong to people who live on. Rather, they can live temporarily only for a brief period of time, and after their death, the earth holds them in the form of graves. So man should realize the transient life, the temporariness of life, transitoriness of life. Man should realize this. Bhagavad Gita also says the same. Whatever we possess today, that may go to some other person tomorrow. So we should not be over possessive in getting the lands, in getting the wealth, in amassing the wealth. So this is the idea that we find in Vishnu Purana. So here, all the creatures are the children of Mother Earth. So it's a responsibility for us to treat them dignity, to treat them with dignity. Hence, the speaker reckons that the fish is like a woman died on the seashore. It is improper to eat the flesh of someone. He expresses his obnoxious feeling to eat the flesh of someone. His heart does not like the act of licking the wound of someone. I quote, a dark, half-naked length of woman, dead, on the beach in the yard of cloth, dry, rolled by the ebb, breaded by the grind indifference of sand. I headed for the shore, my heart beating in my mouth, unquote. Here we find the speaker of this poem, breaded fish, has made that observation that he is not ready to eat the breaded fish. It appears to be a dead woman on the seashore, a dead woman on the seashore. It is just like the licking the wound of some other person. Eating meat of any other creature is just like licking the wound of some other person. If a person realizes the obnoxious nature of this, nobody can eat meat. Nobody can eat meat. In fact, A.K. Ramanujan may have been influenced by another ancient poet in Tamil, Thiruvalluvar, and who speaks in one of his Tirukkurals. In fact, it appeared in a translated version, G.U. Pope's translation, under that the chapter, the renunciation of flesh. And there that Kural appears, I quote, with other beings' ulcerous wounds, their hunger they appease. If this they felt desire to eat must surely cease, must surely stop. If people realize that, they simply take the ulcerous wounds of other persons or other creatures, they can stop to eat. 2000 years ago, Thiruvalluvar speaks about the renunciation of flesh in his great work, Tirukkural. And we find that this is relevant even today. Man should not harm his fellow beings, his fellow brethren, by killing these flora, fauna, fish, and other living creatures just for meat, just for eating. So man should renounce the desire to eating the flesh of other animals. So it shows the love of our ancient intellectuals, poets who love nature very much, and they consider all the creatures are their own fellow brethren. All the creatures are the children of Mother Earth. So they treat them with dignity. In River Once, R. Parthasarathi, another noted Indian English writer, expresses his anguish on seeing the bad condition of the river Vaigai in Madurai. So Madurai is the cultural capital of ancient Tamil Nadu. The city is known for enriching the Tamil language from ancient times. Many academies, Tamil academies, were established by the ancient Tamil rulers to enrich the language, Tamil language. So it's a cultural cradle of Tamil civilization. The river Vaigai, the bank of the river Vaigai, the city Madurai is situated. On the bank of the river Vaigai, the city Madurai is situated. So this poet, R. Parthasarathi, feels sad and expresses his shock to see the degradation of the river Vaigai. Nature has made everything beautiful, but people change them ugly due to their insensitiveness. Once the city was thrived, the river was glorified by the ancient rulers, ancient emperors. The city itself is considered to be a cradle of a Tamil civilization. But unfortunately, today, the river turns to be mere gutter. Mere gutter. The river speaks, I quote, "Kingfishers and egrets whom I fed have flown my paps, my bosoms. Also emperors and poets who slept in my arms. I am become a siva, a gutter, a siva. Now no one has any use for Vaigai river, once of this sweet city," unquote. So the river turns to be a sewer now. It shows that the insensitiveness of people, modern people. Once the river was the cradle of Tamil civilization. Unfortunately, the river turns to be a mere sewer today. It is due to the callous nature of modern people who do not respect nature, who destroy nature, who destruct nature. So the river has been decayed due to the indifference of modern people against nature and its beauty. So they fail to realize the importance of nature and desecrate the beauty of it, So the title of the poem itself is very much suggestive. River Once. So Vaigai once was a river and no more now. That indicates that no more now. No more a river now. It is mere a sewer now. It shows that the callous nature of human beings, modern people. In the name is a lady, Manjeri S. Iswaran, another poet from South India, glorifies the neem tree, which is part of nature as a goddess. In Hindu religion, we find that there are trees, there are animals, there are birds. They have the association with gods and goddesses. For example, Lord Shiva has Rishabha, the bull, as his Vahana. Lord Vishnu has Garuda, the eagle, as his Vagana. Lord Muruga has the peacock as his Vagana. Durga has that the lioness as her Vagana. So in Hindu religion, the followers of Hinduism, they worship the gods and goddesses as well as they worship nature in the form of the Vaganas of all these gods and goddesses. The neem tree is worshipped as the goddess by people of India, especially the barren women, and they seek issue. They seek the blessing of neem and the pipala tree, and they seek the blessing of these trees to get issues. The barren women, they want to get issues, and they worship a neem tree and a pipala tree. In fact, Manjeri S. Iswaran presents that idea how that the neem tree is highly venerated and which helps all other creatures like crows, pigeons, and squirrels to live on it happily. In the same way, in Tamil Nadu, you can find that in every temple there is a sthala vriksha. There is a temple tree. So different species of trees are attributed to each temple in Tamil Nadu as the sthala vriksha, as the temple tree. It shows that how the ancient Indians, they worship nature along with the religion, along with the gods and goddesses. I mean, in Hinduism, people, they worship nature by the Hindus, the followers of Hinduism, and they worship the trees, different species of trees. They worship the birds, and they associate the birds with certain gods and goddesses, and we find that that sort of veneration, respect is given to nature. But unfortunately, of late, we find that in the name of development, in the name of urbanization, nature, resources of nature are devastated, destroyed by modern man. On killing a tree, in another poem, Jeev Patel brings out his concern for killing a tree and destroying nature. In this poem, he gives a recipe, a step-by-step process of eliminating a tree. Indirectly, he urges people to see how the tree suffers when man does the cruel act of pulling it and making the tree to die. Look at the lines from this poem on killing a tree. I quote, then the matter of scorching and choking in sun and air, browning, hardening, twisting, withering, and then it is done. Unquote. Finally, that tree has been killed by all these step-by-step process. It indicates that the violence, pain, and cruelty that the people inflict upon the tree for their selfish reasons, and they may feel sad about this, and they may come forward to protect a tree. In fact, an expert, Sir Jagdish Chandra Bose, a scholar in physics as well as in the field of botany, and he has found that important scientific fact that a tree has the feelings. Tree has feelings. 100 years ago, Jagdish Chandra Bose has established scientifically that trees also have feelings, feelings like sadness, pain, and he scientifically proved this fact. So it's a duty of every one of us to protect trees. Trees, they are responsible for the protective cover, ozone layer. But unfortunately, by the name of development, the deforestation that continues, and man should realize that trees are very much important. Nature is very much essential. So sensible human beings should preserve the trees which help the environment as well as that leads to the protection of mankind on this world. In Mother Earth, Sayyid Amanuddin expresses his concern for nature, which is indiscriminately destroyed by modern people. And he condemns the misdeeds of them who commit cruelty to the creatures of nature and destroy the flora and the fauna of the earth. He observes that the earth is the mother of all living species, and all the creatures are the children of Mother Earth, the children of Mother Earth. So it's a responsibility of all of us to protect the fellow brethren, the fellow beings, the trees, animals, birds, reptiles, and so on. So it's a duty of us to protect and preserve nature. People destroy the resources of nature, and they destruct the forest rapidly, which preserve the ozone layer, as already we discussed. The ozone layer is a cover of earth, and it shields human beings from the dangerous rays of space. And the pollution that occurs at all levels, and we find that pollution at all levels, pollution of land, pollution of air, pollution, noise pollution, pollution of water pollution, land pollution, air pollution. So pollution that occurs and that affects very much nature and the Mother Earth too. So the poet depicts the cruelty of mankind against nature. And he says, I quote, selfishly destroying your children, daring to prolong his own life, fells forest, ruins rivers, massacres mountains, threatening to seek another home elsewhere, unquote. Man, it is an irony, man who could not save this planet, who could not save this planet, seeking another home elsewhere in the universe. So it is an irony, and it is delineated by Syed Amanuddin in this poem. So Keki and Darwala, another Indian English poet, and he has dealt vividly the theme of epidemic and death in many of his poems. And he has presented realistically the fear caused by the pandemic cholera in the poem Pestilence. So he begins the poem by giving the readers the sense of a mass moving humanity being driven by disease and death, as we saw during this crucial, critical stage of COVID-19, the outbreak of coronavirus, COVID-19, how that the migrant laborers of our country, they moved. The crows of our fellow countrymen, and they suffered a lot because they are afraid of the disease, and they are afraid of death. In the same manner, we find that Keki and Darwala presents in this poem the movement of people. They move en masse. I quote, "Pairs of padded feet are behind me, astride me, in front of me. The footpaths are black feet converging on the town." Unquote. It shows how people en masse they move due to the fear of the disease, cholera. They move in large number due to a fear about the outbreak of epidemic. It may happen whenever the epidemic or pandemic that spreads, automatically people, they run for their lives. They run for their lives. The villagers carry the sick ones on string beds. The poet says, I quote, on the string beds, they carry no henna smeared brides. Prone upon them are frail bodies, frozen bodies, delirious bodies, some moving, others supine, transfixed under the sun. Unquote. So these men, they suffer, and many of them are dead. Their bodies are carried by the palanquin bearers. In fact, the palanquin bearers, they do not carry the groom or the bride. They carry the dead bodies. And we immediately remind of today's COVID-19 situation when we read these lines, how the bodies are transported. Even in some cases, we find that in municipality vans or trucks, the bodies of people are carried. So it shows the enormous effect of the epidemic COVID-19. Keki and Darwala says that owing to cholera, death has become so frequent that the dogs of the street start to run after an ambulance whenever they come across it. I quote, "Mongrels tail the ambulance till dust and gasoline fumes choke them off." Unquote. So the authorities always try to downplay the effect of an epidemic like cholera. It happened in COVID, the outbreak of COVID also. We remember the statements of the American president, Donald Trump, and he made that statement, it is just like a flu. It is just like a flu. And many people died in America, but he simply states that it is like a flu. Even he refuses to wear the face mask, and we saw all these information in our media. So here, Darwala presents how the authorities they downplay the effect of epidemic. The poet says, I quote, "Who says they have cholera? They are down with the diarrhea. Who says it is cholera? It is gastroenteritis," unquote. So the authorities, they want to hide the figures and they do not like to expose the original facts always, especially time like this, outbreak of the epidemics or pandemics, they always hide the truth. And here we find the poet has brought such details in this poem. So Darwala says that, and when of a sudden cholera turns to death, the feet keep up their padded progress. Only the string bed is exchanged for a blank. Unquote. So he has portrayed realistically the sorrow and the suffering of human beings. And they go in string beds when they die, and they have been carried by a plank, carried by planks, the board-like structure which is used to carry the dead body. So it is really unfortunate to see death during epidemic or pandemic. In Pestilence in 19th century Calcutta, K.N. Darwala presents the moving picture of the death toll caused by calamitous disease like cholera. He reproduces the severity of situation through the speech of Barber of Sahib with a satiric touch. I quote, "Blackfellow die much," said the Sahib's barber to him, referring to the ghettos beyond the esplanade, where people writhed in the groaning calisthenics of cholera. Bacteria and bacillus throve in the wells, nestled under the spawn beds and killed. The fire burnt higher, and the dead went up like fragments of liturgies lost in the great wind. Unquote. The epidemic does not distinguish between the whites and the blacks. It is shocking for the Sahib to see that though this land of mud and mire, death was everywhere. This time it was Sahibs who fell like skittles. Skittles are bottle-shaped objects used in bowling. I quote the words of Darwala. The Reinhardts, Debussy's, Claude Martins, the Smiths, and the Lawrences, British and French and Dutch, interred in the same loam, mourned by the same tolling bells, the remains bristling with like crucifixes, unquote. So irrespective of their nationality, irrespective of their religion, irrespective of their linguistic identities, once the epidemic sets in, that takes away the lives of them, the lives of them. So the epidemic is a great leveler. Death is a great leveler. Irrespective of gender, irrespective of the nationalities, irrespective of the linguistic identities, death takes the lives of all people. So it's a great leveler. Death is a great leveler. The epidemic is a great leveler. So the poet presents the apprehension and the fear of the unpredictable death in the poem. And he highlights the all-pervading sense of loss and fear. He presents the the lightning attack, the quick speed, how that the disease, the epidemic, cholera that affects people, he records. I quote, "And always it was so sudden. You lunched with a fellow, and by dusk he was dead. And the tolling from the belfry was only way you heard of it," unquote. We understand that how quickly the disease, the epidemic, the pandemic that take pandemic that takes, the disease takes the life of people. The life of people. In the morning, they are alive. At the evening, they die. So this is the situation we experience during pandemic now too, COVID-19 too. So the current COVID-19 crisis is adeptly portrayed by the poet J. Arul Anand in his poem Lockdown Lunacies. And he presents the anxiety of people obviously. I quote the lines of this poem. I quote, "When can we flatten the curve and be free from the COVID scare? An eerie silence keeps on howling as never before. Just like any other piece of news, it came. Somewhere from China, some corona, forwarded messages as usual. Deserted Wuhan streets, segmented human beings, panicked personnel in PPEs, and point-blank infrared thermometers, received, shivered, and shared, and even laughed at the clippings," unquote. The poet skillfully presents how the coronavirus, COVID-19, has affected the nations of the world. I quote, "The tide relentless trickled in. Italy choked. Baffled were nations. Panting for breath was the United States. God. Unlike any other piece of news, it pested," unquote. The poet brings out artistically the response of Indians to COVID-19 pandemic who have tried to use the traditional medicines. I quote, "Lockdowns clamped, crippling normal life. Positives quarantined, negatives masked and monitored. Soaps and sanitizers faced an uphill task. Wash hands, washed 1,000 times a day. Keep distance, learned to tuck at the sight of scary humans. Boost of immunity. Amla, ginger, pepper, and turmeric, and streams of WhatsApp aromas filled my kitchen lab," unquote. Since there is no medicine for COVID-19, Indians, they turned towards their ancient medical practices and they follow to prevent the spread of the virus. And here we find that the authentic portrayal of the poet. So the poet asks the serious question, when shall we flatten the spiraling scare? He highlights the social stigma of the positive person. The poet experiences the hallucination. I quote, "One terma read my forehead and caught me red. An instant infernal heat tears apart my temples. A million butterflies in my stomach cried, I am okay. Is that ambulance a siren? I am okay. Where do you pack me? To quarantine zone? I am okay. Who is that crying? My wife or daughter? I am okay. Don't scare us. Wake up. With arms akimbo stands my wife, frowning. Her divine voice then thus clamored, lockdown lunacies, get up, you are okay, you are alive, unquote. Here, we find that the hallucination experienced by the poet, it is due to the outbreak of coronavirus, COVID-19. Every one of us also experiences the same sort of fear. If something happened to our throat, or if something we have like a cold, the symptoms of cold, immediately we doubt ourselves whether we are getting affected, So it is that anxiety, that fear, that tension is ably presented by the poet Arulananda in this poem. So in locked and down in lockdowns, in another poem, J. Arulanand, the poet, longs to come out from the difficult situation of the COVID-19 pandemic. He prays to God to forgive the sins of mankind and bring back the divine bliss upon them. I quote, would your chariot run, dear son, from west to the east? Would your heart return, Mother Earth, back to the pristine past? Could you flare up holy fire to purge our land? Could you pour down mighty clouds to cleanse our hands? May there be light amongst us, Father and our Savior again, unquote. It is like the sin of Lady Macbeth of killing Duncan. Still the blood stains are there. Here the poet appeals again to cleanse our hands, the sins we committed against nature that come in other way, in the form of bacteria, in the form of virus, and then that cause epidemics, that cause pandemics. So from the analysis of the poems of these Indian English poets, the reader could understand the environmental concerns of them, the eco-consciousness of them, love of nature of them, as we find in A.K. Ramanujan or Parthasarathi, who insist that the preservation of river and the nature is clearly, we have seen that in the poem River Once. Manjeri S. Iswaran, and he has brought out how Indians worship different trees. So the veneration that should not be confined to any single species, and the people should love all trees and as well as nature. So G. Patel depicts the importance of saving trees which are deeply rooted in the earth. So Syed Amanuddin has expressed his concern for environment and a love of nature in his poem. So he fondly calls earth as the mother to all creatures. K.N. Darwala adeptly presents the suffering of people caused by the pestilence cholera. J. Arulananda highlights the sad state of affairs of man in the COVID-19 period, and he prays to God to forgive the mankind. People should love nature and save the planet from disaster due to the actions caused by them. It is the responsibility to give the world safely to the next generation. It's a responsibility of every one of us to safely give this planet to our future generation. It's a duty of every one of us. So we have to love nature. We should love Mother Earth. we have to love nature. So that is the bottom line of my presentation today. So I thank the authorities once again, the convener and the joint convener of this wonderful webinar. And I thank all the participants, all the participants. I thank all the participants for your patient listening. Thank you.
Hello.
Hello, sir.
Hello.
Yes,
Ashwin,
sir.
Ashwin, can you join now? Hello. Ashwin, please join the webinar. So the presentation was wonderful, and Ashwin is
Thank you
going to
so much,
conduct
sir.
Ashwin is going to conduct the interactive session actually.
Sure, sir.
Maybe there is some technical problem for which he is not being able to join. I'm calling him. Okay, you just hold for a minute.
Sure, sir.
Good afternoon, Professor Raja. Can you hear me?
Good afternoon, sir. Good afternoon, sir. Good afternoon.
Yes, sir. I join. Yes.
Welcome,
yes,
sir.
I'm here.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, sir. SS sir, and thank you so much, Dr. Raja, for this wonderful session, for this wonderful talk, sir. Thank you. That was excellent.
Thank you.
And when I
Thank
say
you.
excellent, I can say it on behalf of every
Thank you.
participant, every one out there who is present.
Thank you.
So
Thank you so
it
much,
was
ma'am.
so different and unexpected. And you have talked about how we have only one planet and we have to preserve that no matter what.
Absolutely.
And what role does the poet play in doing so? So there, the eco consciousness of those 5 Indian poets you have talked about here are so eminent and so essential in creating our consciousness for the nature, for preserving the nature. So you have talked about that. So, and also I have gathered some information that from your lecture, that environment does not only concerns mountains or bridge or river or leaves or trees, like it also concerns the fish in the leaves, in the rivers, the birds on the trees. So you have talked about that also. And to create a balance, to strike a balance, we have to live in perfect harmony to make it work. And you have also connected it to this pandemic situation, this whole nature debate. So thank you very much, sir, for
Thank
being
you so
here
much,
and for
ma'am.
this
Thank you.
wonderful talk.
Thank
And
you.
what I can see, I actually, to my surprise, the people are here only to cheer you up. Only they are sending you good wishes, and they are telling that it is wonderful presentation, excellent presentation, very fruitful, and maybe your talk was so detailed and so
Thank
fulfilling
you.
that actually nobody asked a question, because it was
Thank you.
already so fulfilled and people
Thank you.
actually got their answers already, I guess. So it
Thank
was
you.
very
Thanks
good,
a lot.
very, yeah. And people are sending wishes you, it keeps coming, very interesting session. And it was so fulfilling that it's surprising that nobody actually had a question for you.
Great.
But yes, there was one observation, or not one, many observation, that they wanted to know that whether they can see this presentation again or not. So yes, you can see, following the YouTube link, you can again see the recorded version. And another issue that someone has, or 2 or 3 people have talked about, that they wanted that PPT presentation. So I have to say that that is Dr. Ayappa's personal property. We have nothing to do with it. So all you can do is to ask him via mail or something. That, and another thing, that it's his property. He is the owner of it. So we had nothing to do with it. So yeah, you can see it again without getting the PPT. You can see it again, and again see it in detailed version. Okay. So thank you, sir, for being here.
Thank you
Thank
so
you,
much,
sir,
ma'am. Thank you.
for your
Thank you, one and
time.
all.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. And again, Shobut Sharkar is here. I feel immense pride in inviting you and introducing you, sir, because I have had that opportunity, this amazing opportunity to work under you as a student, and now it gives me immense pride to introduce you like that, where I am the convener and you are the presenter. So it is like some time machine that we have come from. And again, I am looking forward to your lecture from morning, actually, because it was like. It was like listening to you again as a student. So let me introduce you, sir, to all of our participants. Just a minute, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, so Shobut Sharkar is an assistant professor of English, University of Gorbongo, Malda, which is situated in India. He has been teaching since 2009. He has attended and presented papers in a considerable number of national and international level seminars. His areas of interest are folk studies, cultural studies, and green studies. He writes poems in English, wonderful poems, I must say, and Bengali. He edited volumes of Bengali poems. Jolodorchi has been published in 2020. He is the founding members of Meg Dumbor, a literary magazine of folk studies. Recently, he is working on anthology of English poems, Aulus, and that is it. I mean, the introduction itself says that what he is all about. So over to you, sir. You may proceed now.
Thank
you,
thank
sir.
you, Asrin. Thank you for this generous introduction to me. And yeah, it's once again to be back to those days when you was a student there, but now a teacher, now assistant professor of Shagor Mohabidyalay. I thank you from the bottom of my heart for inviting me to this one-day webinar on pandemic, and also my thanks to the uh, departmental head of English department, Abhishek Maiti, and to the teacher in charge of Shagor Mohabidyalay. Thank you all. Thank you in this nice good afternoon. The topic of my paper, as it was declared earlier, and it was on the uh, webinar poster also, Black Days, Pandemic, London, and Defoe's A Journal of the Plague Year. Now, what I have done actually to divide the whole project in 3 sections. Now, first of all, I will go for Black Days and Pandemic first, and I will talk a little about London, and then I will move to Defoe's Journal of the Plague Year. So when the time we are right now passing through, so naturally the topic of the webinar is very pertinent, and it's very, very significant also. So how to tackle, or this is not the first time that we the people are actually meeting these troubled times. Before us, so many people have already encountered, they met the problem, they faced it. So could they do anything? What was those past? So let's go back to those days. So when I am talking of in the first part of my title, Black Days, what I would like to mention first, Black Days, directly I would like to connect to the days of those threats to England and in Europe, particularly in the 14th century, plague days. Plague, that was the another name of plague was Black Death. Actually, the body got changed, the color got changed, discolored body, and a changed color of the skin got changed, so the name came Black. Actually, so Black Death, and it no doubt was a great threat to the people of the time in England and in Europe particularly. So if we go back to those days, one thing that will be very much important to mention here is those days where no doubt came all on a sudden in England, and it came repeatedly. But people, and the way people actually were engaged in their lives, the kind of sanitation system they had, that I will be talking in detail later on, the sewage system also, those were in question, no doubt. And those questions actually are to be discussed, that sanitation and the hygiene are those of the things they were hardly aware of. And that actually prompted to such kind of difficulties that came to them all on a sudden. So I'm moving to them gradually. So the book that I have consulted recently is by Rosemary Horax. Rosemary Horax is not the author, rather an editor of the book. And the name of the book is The Black Death. And as an editor, Rosemary Horax, what the editor has done actually, there is an in-depth, detailed, extensive consultation of various texts and references, and some of the eyewitnesses, and how the people of the time really had those troubled times they faced, and some of them wrote those things in the diaries, in their memoirs, and a few through oral tales. So how all the things came into practice, those are documented by Rosemary Horax. Now, what Rosemary Horax is actually, not only documented, but the commentaries made in the introductory sections of the text, The Black Death, is also very important, because plague in 14th century that came all on a sudden, no doubt, but at the same time, it changed the value system. It changed the concept of faith. It changed the concept of future hopes too. And it was a threat not only on the social life, but also a threat on the religious life as well, the cultural life as well. In the introduction of the text, Rosemary is going for a few very pertinent words that I think need to be discussed here. I quote from Rosemary's text, The Black Death. The disease which swept across Europe in the late 1340s seemed to contemporaries to herald the end of the world. So people had the kind of belief that, so the world is going to be an end and nothing, no more help is there. To the chroniclers of Padua, a very famous place, the plague was a devastation more final than Noah's flood. Every student of English literature, as the seminar is particularly for the students of Sagor Mahavidyalaya, so addressing them, I would like to say that we all know the story of Noah, because English literature is very much connected to the Bible. So Noah's flood, that very devastation, it was far serious than this, and they thought that it is the end of that very world, and that was something that might happen to them. When God had left some people alive to continue the human race, on the other side of Europe in Kilkenny, John Klein left blank pages at the end of his chronicle. And then in the blank pages he wrote, "In case anyone should still be alive in future," unquote. So some blank pages of history that John Klein, left in the blank pages of the chronicle. So no one knows who will be alive in future, because everyone is getting passing away. They are dying in front of everyone, and there was no rescue, no help, no medication, nothing. So this very fact, these very introductory lines, and then if we start reading the text, this very horror, it's almost like a horror tales, horror documentation. We cannot imagine how, in what way those people really spend those times and days without proper improvement in treatment. Another very interesting thing that Horax is also pointing out, and I think this is very important, is that when 21st century reader, researcher, or thinker, we often discuss. So there was a kind of a, rethinking of the popular myths and the belief system, because in that very time, in medieval period, what really happened is that the point of exaggeration. So what do I mean by the point of exaggeration? Exaggeration in that very number of deaths. In so many texts, it was written that almost 90% people are gone. They are wiped out because of plague. Somewhere it was written 80%. So Rosemary thinks that it is a kind of a notorious, I quote Rosemary, notorious medieval tendency to inflate numbers. So the fact was not like that. It was not 90% people are gone, nor even it is 80% people are gone. Rather, it is more or less 40% to 50 or maximum 55%. So this very tendency of exaggeration are very much there. But it is true that we cannot deny even that the plague came all on a sudden and people had no time for preparation, and they had nothing actually, because suddenly and there was no precaution even also, and there was any kind of awareness even. They didn't know this kind of disease was known as plague. That is the very another important thing to discuss. The name of a disease is plague. No one knew, because new kind of symptoms or a similar kind of symptoms in different areas with more or less same or with certain modifications were seen regularly. Things are happening like that. Swelling of the body, high fever, and certain blisters on the body, and the color of the skin is getting changed, discoloration of the skin. So these are the symptoms. And then on the other part of the place or some other country, so gradually what is happening, coldness, a pinching sensation on the body, almost like someone is pinching with a needle, and then senselessness, and the man don't come back. He is gone gradually. So people had no idea that this kind of things are called plague even. No one knew. Only some people are having chest pain, and then infection in the lungs, and then a cough, blood is coming out of cough, and then death. So people needed time to come in a conclusion and to jot down all the symptoms, and then to go for this kind of thing is called Black Death, or it is called plague. And it was also a matter of debate of the time then what is the source of a disease like this? And it was after the long time they took to come into the conclusion that the primary vector of plague was a kind of a rat flea. The scientific name is Genocilla cheops. So this very rat flea, the kind of the vector of plague, they and through which the germs are getting transmitted to the human body. and either the rat flea is actually sitting on the human body, and then there is a cut, and through the blood it's getting transmitted through. So it took a long time to understand, because people had new inventions, or they had some new kind of thoughts. So then even couldn't imagine the sources of some thought this is that even the god is angry, and that's why due to some reason some things are happening also. But another thing is that Rosemary is also putting this kind of observations: ecological change in Central Asia and the connection of plague. So the ecological changes in Central Asia, I am quoting from Rosemary, that drove the infected animals out of their existing habitats and into closer proximity to human settlements, allowing the disease to become endemic among the local rat population, facilitating the movement of fleas to human host. And so it moved on. So this very connection through the Central Asia, and in some cases that the plague has a kind of the route of through the Silk Route, the way the business took place in that very time, in the medieval time. So probably the way, but ecological change is something that has to be that there is a kind of a connection that people are actually thinking of. But it was not even clear to anyone that rat flea or through the rats probably plague is actually coming, because some other versions are also there. Some Islamic authors of the time, they found that probably this kind of things are happening due to the birds. Okay, due to the birds. And few references are found in which it was seen that birds are dying continuously, and they thought probably the reason of plague was nothing but the birds. So such variations were very much there. But now people of the time, those who are actually trying to observe more and more how the things are coming up, we have the reference of another thinker who is Giles Lee Muisi. So Giles Lee Muisi was the one who for the first time commented that it was probably, it has some connection to the weather and that climate change. So climate change, of course, it has a major role to play in any endemic or in any pandemic. So the climate change is something that never to be overlooked. Okay. So what was the observations of Muisi? Muisi commented that in 1349 to 1350, the winter was not as usual, rather it was a bit mild. Okay, frost did not happen the way it is seen normally, and some observations were found by some Paris-based medical personalities, who to also observe that probably the weather got changed between 1347 to 1348. So some ecological imbalance is taking place. That probably was there that they were thinking of. And the rat flea that we have already referred to is best active in that particular favorable temperature, which is within the range of 20 to 25 degrees Celsius. So somehow the ecological imbalance, the change of the time, change of the weather, and all these things are actually, very perfect. They're all coming together. Okay. So climate change, that very particular point was not discussed for long, but nowadays it is getting importance, that how this very ecological change, this very climate change is also playing a very vital role in our approaches to pandemic studies. Now, I would like to come back to this very 2020 Corona time, because before Corona outbreak, before coming of that COVID-19, if we think certain things are happening all around. For example, one or two instances I would like to point here. In 2019, in the UK, the people there experienced highest ever heat. A report of BBC shows that people in Cambridge, there is a very beautiful, picture, but the weather was not at all beautiful. That people in the Cambridge, they are, all on the boats, they are on the river, because probably this is the only way one can escape the heat. But this maximum temperature, it was 38.7 degrees Celsius, that was recorded in the Cambridge University Botanic Garden. Their officials, they were measuring the kind of temperature, highest ever. And it was also a kind of a question, that sudden heat. And we know that before this pandemic came, a report came out in the Tribune magazine, Chandigarh-based newspaper, and it was also everywhere. Naresh Kumar, the director of Snow and Avalanche Studies establishment, and he gave a kind of a statement that between November 2019 to January 2020, we find that the kind of snowfall India experienced, it was the highest ever in last 30 years. And it was in an extreme condition. I do remember somewhere it was also published that the kind of snowfall India experienced in this particular phase, it was even the polar position, it was higher than that. One last reference that I would like to point out here before I move further. It was in 2018. In 2018, the Sahara Desert, hottest place on earth, experienced a huge amount of snowfall. And close to Sahara Desert, there is a particular town which is known as Ain Sefra, and which is popularly known as the gateway of the desert. People waking up in the morning, astonished, seeing that the whole area is covered with snow. Now I come to the conclusion, and now I come to the point that somehow there is a kind of a huge connection between endemic, pandemic, and the climate change. That is one of the areas of today's discussion. I visited the website of WHO, World Health Organization. Now, World Health Organization, they are also of the same opinion. They are also making the connection between climate change and the disease. What is WHO's observation? I quote from the website of WHO. There are three categories of research into the linkages between climate conditions and infectious disease transmission. Infectious disease transmission. The first examines evidence from the recent past of associations between climate variability and infectious disease occurrence. The second looks at early indicators of already emerging infectious disease impact of long-term climate change. The third uses the above evidence to create predictive models to estimate the future burden of infectious disease under projected climate change scenario. As a proof of their statements, I will give just only one example, taking the help from the WHO website, who is directly connecting this very climate change and the epidemic or endemic condition with India also, because they are referring to that particular condition of malaria. Malaria is of great public health concern and seems likely to be the vector-borne disease most sensitive to the long-term climate change. Malaria varies seasonally in high endemic areas. The link between malaria and extreme climatic event has long been studied in India. So the point is that the kind of plague, climate change, and the Europe of the 1340s that we were discussing there is actually yes, there might be certain connections, and future researchers will go more and more into it, that whether really all those climate changes and other things are there. But I will move to my second point, that is London. In my title, there was a little bit about a Black Death condition, and then I will move to London. So London in 2020, almost like almost all the countries of the world, the way they were suffering from COVID-19, as we the Indians too right now. But London is a kind of a place that remained a kind of a continuous victims of these endemics and epidemics. But interesting fact is that Elizabethan, if we go back to the Elizabethan period, since then actually we find that somehow the maintenance of hygiene was never properly done in England. And several texts will say that in Elizabethan times, the cities had no sewage system. People even did not bathe regularly. People in Elizabethan England did not bathe regularly. They threw their trash around and didn't realize that if they didn't pick up their city, this would affect their life in all ways. So that was that very way people used to pass their time every day. Practices was something like that, that that very poor sense of sanitation they suffered from. And we know that those who were the poorest of the poor in Elizabethan England, they were the worst sufferers. Because for the middle class people, one example, for the middle class people, they had a very good, sufficient amount of water for the everyday use. But what happened really to the poorest of the poor in Elizabethan England? Because that water came to them from the River Thames. And now, as no sewage system was there, all the dust and the dirts, everything was thrown into the river. Without any proper way of purification, that very, polluted water of the Thames that was used by the poor people, and they were the early victims of epidemics and endemics. I would like to refer a few references from Shakespeare's Henry IV Part 1 that talks a lot about of the period. And one reference that is very much relevant here is the deplorable condition of an inn. In the inn, we find in Henry IV Part 1, one character is there to say, why they will allow us never a Jordan, and then we lick in your chimney, and your chamber lie breeds fleas like a loach. in Act 1, Scene 1 of Henry IV, Part 1, we find the reference of a Jordan. So what is the Jordan that people of the time used? A Jordan is a kind of a, is a kind of a slang word that is known as that is even used even today. That is called chamber pot. Now this chamber pot was very much in practice, and the use of chamber pot is from ancient time, from Greece to till now. Even today, for the babies, we often use the chamber pot at home. They don't go to the bathroom in that way, washroom. So this Jordan, and why the name Jordan, it has a long history. I am not moving to that. But people use Jordan or the chamber pot. In the next morning, they just simply threw the darts on the road. And this very tendency, this very connection polluted the environment, attracted flies, germs, and then the pandemic, then the epidemic. Record shows London had, if we look at that very history of London, in 1563, 1578 to 79, 1582, 1592 to 93, 1603. So plagues came in different way with new modifications. Somewhere it was known as the bubonic plague, other plagues, and plagues continued. And it was there very much. So when Daniel Defoe wrote a text known as the Journal of the Plague Year, so it was nothing new. Rather, the presentation was new, because after the publication of the book in 1722, so many observations and criticisms came out. People were there to say that, it was a kind of a text. So I have one observation with me, that had this Journal of the Plague reached London in 1722, it would have sold like hotcakes. Some found in it some false remedies and other observations, and it was Jonathan Swift to comment that, okay, in Journal of the Plague Year we find Swift as a writer who is grave, sententious, and dogmatical. One of his all-time favorite reader, Sir Walter Scott, was always liberal and happy with the writings of Daniel Defoe, and he was there to say the incidents are huddled together like a paving stones discharged from a cart. But at the same time, he categorized the genre of a text like this, a Journal of the Plague Year. It is in between a romance and a history, because it talks about the 1665 plague, the Great Plague in London. And Defoe, the man, was only 5 years old. And the book, the sources, it is assumed that probably he got the idea from his uncle, Henry IV. It was through Henry IV that he came to know all about the references. And then in the narrative of a person who in 1665 is really in trouble in that very London, and that London where already plague is there. So how to tackle, how to meet how to face the challenges. Those are discussed in the text. So in spite of several contradictory commentaries and observations on the journal of the plague year, the ultimate observation is that it is a classic boundary text because it delimits the point of classification. And it is such an experimental text that talks a lot about not only on the part of plague but also on the art of writing fiction. Now it is in between romance and history. Few references are very, very if we read the text, it may seem to us that it is so vibrant, it is so lively. When I, as a reader, reading a text like this in 2020, when sitting in India, we all know that we are all confined within because of COVID-19. I find the text, in my observation, the text so relevant that anyone in India can connect, anyone of the people of the time can connect the way Defoe wrote a journal of the plague year. Because first of all, the way the text begins, we had hardly any doubt what is COVID-19. COVID-19 all on a sudden came in news, and we had some vague information from different sources that it was in China, Wuhan, in December 2009 that the corona outbreak has taken place. And then gradually news came from Italy, France, Germany, UK, Russia, USA, and so many other places of the world. So this very thing is so beautifully connected in a text like this, that we don't have any problem to read a text like this, that, oh, the people of the time also had the similar kind of tension and anxiety because no one had any information even. I quote from a journal of the plague year by Defoe. It was about the beginning of September 1664 that I, that unnamed narrator of the text, among the rest of my neighbors, heard in ordinary discourse that the plague was returned again in Holland, for it had been very violent there, and particularly at Amsterdam, Rotterdam in the year 1663, whether they say it was brought some from Italy, from Levant, among some goods which were brought home by their Turkey fleet. Others said it was brought from Candia, other from Cyprus. It mattered not from whence it came. All agreed it has come into Holland again. So the way we are all agreed ultimately that it is the source of COVID-19 is from China, Wuhan. So it was Holland. So this very confusion, this very doubt, this very trauma is very much there in the opening lines of the text. And the next important thing that the journal has raised, once again, in every corner I find relevance, and we can connect the text in our present day scenario. The problem of communication. First of all, Defoe is saying that in his time there was no availability of news media, print media, or the way people can communicate and spread news. So it may be bad in one way that people had no information at all. Suddenly it came, people had no idea, they got infected. On the other hand, Defoe is also putting observation that such kind of maximum capacity of communication, it also creates problem. It creates rumor. It creates false data. It creates such kind of a statement, such kind of a false panic. We all seen. We have seen everything. All these statements made by Defoe in the journal, that false panic. So many people experienced, heart attack in this COVID-19, just with that very preliminary news or some false news that he might get, that infection of COVID-19, and later found the man had no COVID-19. So such kind of, panic, it was very much there. I quote here from the text: "We had no such thing as printed newspapers in those days to spread rumors and reports of things and to improve them by the invention of men, as I have lived to see practice since. But such things as these were gathered from the letters of merchants and others who corresponded abroad, and from them was handed about by word of mouth only." So the only source of information, word of mouth, and naturally it is spread less. If that was the reason, it also was harmful because people had no information at all. Because now who is having COVID, I don't even know, because someone around me or my neighbor might be infected with. Another thing that Defoe is also pointing out there is the suppression of fact. It was a tendency. If we, study the, tendency of people, and the connection with diseases, people have the common tendency to suppress. If it is very serious, they often suppress. We have very handful of examples. A serious disease publicly announced, someone is suffering from. Rather, the first tendency is to suppress the information. In pandemic, it is so. And we know so many things are happening around even today. Someone is, already infected with COVID-19, is suppressing, and then, contaminating the environment, meeting with other people, in spite of when the man is already infected with. And this thing is not new. Rather, it was something that was very much there in Defoe's time, or that very 1665 scenario that we are reading from the Journal of the Plague Year. I'm giving one example. In the latter end of November and beginning of December 1664, two men said to be Frenchmen died of the plague in the area upper end of Drury Lane. The family they were in endeavored to conceal it as much as possible. As it had gotten some vent in the discourse of the neighborhood, the secretaries of the state got knowledge of it, concerning themselves to inquire about it, in order to be certain of the truth. Two physicians and a surgeon were ordered to go to the house and make inspection. This they did, finding evident tokens of sickness upon both the bodies. They were dead. And then ultimately it was publicly announced, and these two Frenchmen, they were actually victims of plague. So this suppression, it is true that in case of pandemic, you cannot suppress. It will come out someday. But at the preliminary stage, this very tendency was there, and even today. It is in Italy. Another very important text on plague. Italy, that very Italy, which too also very badly affected by COVID-19. But we know that they have managed it well. And if we search today on the websites, the ranking of the people now in serious conditions, that Italy, who were in a very tragic condition then, now in a very comfortable zone in the ranking of the countries. Now they are in a very saturated places, in a very stable condition. So in that very Italy, Boccaccio talks about or tells the story how 7 young women and 3 young men, they were fleeing from the plague infected Florence. They took shelter in a deserted villa in a countryside named Fiesole for 2 weeks. And they spend time there with a kind of a competition of telling stories every day by each of the member. And the outcome is Boccaccio's The Decameron. Now, if we read Defoe's journal, we find the unnamed narrator here, who is also in a kind of a dilemma, in a kind of a indecision, what to do, how to tackle the plague-infected London. Now he is coming off the kind of a plan to flee away from the place. The narrator has a brother who resides in that very countryside, and also getting suggestion on the part of his brother that he should also leave London now and to go somewhere else, or to his brother's place at least, to take shelter. Now the very tension, the very anxiety is leaving the place, infected place, the city, the town is the only way. I quote from the text. I now begin to consider seriously with myself concerning my own case, how I should dispose of myself, that is to say, whether I should resolve to stay in London or shut up my house and flee. Because shutting up the house is not the only way out, as many of my neighbors did. I have set this particular down so fully because I know not, but it may be of moment to those who come after me, if they come to be brought to the same distress and to the same manner of making their choice, and therefore I desire this account may pass with them rather for a direction to themselves, to act by then a history of my actings. So this very tendency. Now the narrator in the text is a kind of a dilemma, because he cannot move further, because he is doing a kind of a business. And here we find a connection, because the kind of business that Defoe's uncle Henry Foe used to do, the narrator in Journal of the Plague Year is doing the same kind of business, saddler. So now what to do? Another thing that Defoe is trying to connect or trying to note down here is that in time of pandemic, people has the common tendency that if someone is suffering from some other normal diseases, they even tag it as, no, the man is suffering from the pandemic. Even when there is a very normal fever, they often connect it to the pandemic problem. If someone is having some tasteless bud in tongue, they think, oh no, some references of connections we are finding in between. We find in the text how the narrator is also suffering from a stomach, a very bad headache, a little bit of fever even. And now the narrator himself has started thinking that he is suffering from plague and there is no way out for him. He is going to die. But very soon he comes out of the problem. So this very false panic was always there. So this text not only talks about the problems, but also some of the precautions, some of the imaginary precautions, I must say. The situation that one can face during a serious epidemic like this. Before I conclude, I have two things to say only. Number one is that the description of Defoe in the text is so genuine, is so pathetic, that in spite of several lackings in the text, in spite of several problems in the text, we are once again find that very master storyteller of Robinson Crusoe, who is genuine, who is very minute in his detailings, and so such a perfectionist in his presentation, the kind of London that people faced. The face of London was now indeed strangely altered. A plague-infected London. I mean the whole mass of buildings, city, libraries, suburb, Westminster, Southwark, all together. For as to the particular part called the city, within the walls, that was not yet much infected. But in the whole, the face of things, I say, was much altered. Sorrow and sadness sat upon every face. So we are right now. People are not happy. And though some parts were not yet overwhelmed, yet all looked deeply concerned, as we saw it apparently coming on. So everyone looked on himself and his family as in the utmost danger. Everyone is first thinking of himself and then to the family members. Were it possible to represent those times exactly to those that did not see them? Give the reader due ideas of the horror everywhere presented itself? London might well be said to be all in tears. The mourners did not go about the streets indeed. People are mourning all the time. Nobody put on black or made a formal dress of mourning, because during mourning, people used to dress them in black clad. But no, people are already, exhausted, mornings after mornings. So they don't even dress them up in black dress. The shrieks of women and the children at the window and the doors of their houses, their dearest relations were perhaps dying or just dead, were so frequent to be heard as we passed the street. It was enough to pierce the stoutest heart in the world to hear them. This is that very real picture of London of the time that so minutely Defoe has presented in front of us in the Plague Journal. I am concluding my paper referring just one book. The book was published just a few months ago by Slavoj Žižek, Pandemic COVID-19 Shakes the World. And Žižek is referring one comment to Hegel. Hegel wrote that the only thing we can learn from history is that we learn nothing from history. So I doubt the epidemic will make us any wiser. So it is true, I think. Do we really learn from history? And Žižek is also asking a very key question. What is wrong with our system that we were caught unprepared by the catastrophe, despite scientists warning us about it for years? I have also serious doubt. And I think we should all have the serious doubt. What is the problem in our observation, in our maintenance, in our management, in our science or thinking process? Because epidemics will come, no doubt. And in coming days, it will be far higher, with more trouble, with a new dimension. Are we really prepared for that? This is the high time, and this is the right time to rethink for our future mechanism, what should be, because we have to stay on this earth, and we are the people that we have to take proper precaution to save this earth. Thank you so much.
Hello. So the session was wonderful, sir. Thank you for this wonderful session, sir.
Thank you so much, Abhishek.
You have raised so many important questions. I mean, why it happened and what is going to happen in future. Your observation was quite insightful, and the entire paper was very informative. And you have also pointed out how, I mean, why the Defoe's journal is so much relevant in today's situation. The complexity of Defoe's, I mean, the complexity we are facing today has some sort of similarity with Defoe's paper also. These are very important things that you have pointed out, and I'm certain that all the participants have gained so much new perspective and they have learned so much new things. So I once again thank you for this wonderful session. Now there are certain questions. Yes, Arsin is raising her hand and she's going to say something.
Yes, before you go into the questions of others, I do have a question. So,
Okay.
sir, please, sir, please, it may not be connected with the topic per se, but please elaborate on the role of the media now and in this COVID
Yes.
situation in connection with the media lessness of the first time. Considering media
Mhm.
also tends to circulate misinformation and it also can spread fake news, especially around social media platforms. Your take on that?
Mhm. Thank you. Thank you, Asrin, for your question. But the kind of question you just read, that the take of media, the role of media right now and in Defoe's time when there was no media at all, and Defoe is personally, putting it down in the journal. So media, of course, is on my opinion, I have two different kind of observations. Number one is media is doing some good job, no doubt. Just before or during this very COVID-19, I as a listener, I saw how different kind of, if you take this ginger syrup, it may increase your immunity and it will be very much helpful for you. And this particular app by government of India, and all the information, are you doing this or that? So media is trying their best, but I think media has a limitation too. They only just accumulate information for all of us and then they present it in the screen and we get information from them. Somehow we do believe them that they are doing everything on the basis of the research. So but ultimately few days later it is seen that, oh, it's not working. That hydroxychloroquine, think of that, it was found that very useful. And even some kind of international issues also raised because of the relationship between India and USA. So the president of USA was also in a kind of raised question, why my friend India, they are not giving me that particular medicine. But later it is found that it is not so much that effective. Somehow it is doing a kind of a benefit to us. So media is doing no doubt a very good role, but at the same time they have a limitation. In Defoe's time there was no media at all, and that was also very bad. But somehow they are also safe, uh, that okay, they are not bombarded by false information. Rather they are at least having everything in connection to mouth. But I must say, from our condition to their condition, they were below the rank, because not having any information at all is too bad. At least having different kind of information with some false information inside. That's all.
Yes, thank you, sir. Abhishek, sir, can proceed.
Yes,
Thank you,
yes.
sir. Thank you for answering that. Yeah.
We have another question. It's from Logesh Krishna. Uh, Logesh Krishna is asking, do you think we need to have pandemic literature like eco literature?
Yes, very much. And it is necessary because so many new thinkers are coming up who are exclusively writing on literature connected to pandemic, and so many new novels have come up. Not only that, I am really happy with a question like this, because I cannot remember right now the particular text, but that futuristic text, that few texts have been already been written, that talks after so many years pandemic might come, that observation, that predictions, those kind of text should be included in pandemic literature, and that can elaborate the span and the limitation of pandemic literature. Those who are writing right now, just like Defoe and so many other writers, those who are writing right now on COVID-19, numerous novels and short stories and poems, have already been written, that should be in pandemic literature, and those kind of texts who have already predicted some Maya civilization that after 2000 years or 3000 years another pandemic is coming up, they should also be included. Thank you.
Yes, sir. And I think this kind of text and this kind of genre should be included in the university and college syllabuses also, because
Exactly.
only then people will be like they will be focused on this problem, and they will try to solve out and sort out what is the thing, because the people are not much aware what is happening. Only that, because this year what I have seen, that as people are now in this standstill situation, they are thinking about such climate change situations, climate change issues.
Yes.
But earlier, I feel that people were not much that concerned that what was happening, because
Yes. Yes.
climate
Yes.
change,
Yes.
the issues of climate change and issues of this kind of pandemic, these were there for quite a long time, but people were not much
Yes. Yes.
concerned.
Yes.
So I think this should be also
Exactly.
included in the
Exactly.
syllabuses also, right?
Sure.
So
Sure. Sure.
there is a two questions, and I'd like to put forward these two questions simultaneously, because I find that these two questions are kind of related. So one question is from Pranab Pattaji. He is asking, is the present crisis could be treated as a new beginning? And there is another question. It's from Sanchita Das. She is asking whether do you think that this entire thing, the kind of writing, the kind of pandemic writing, could be termed under a continuum? Could this entire thing be put under a continuum? So he's asking whether 2020 could be treated as a new beginning, whereas there's another
Okay,
question where
it will be better to answer one after another. Okay. So the
okay,
very
so the
first
first
question,
question,
or the second question first,
the first
that
question is like the
yes,
hmm, 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 hmm. Okay, yes sir,
yes,
yes sir, you proceed.
it can be called a new beginning in that sense. Uh, it can be said, but my opinion is that every beginning is a new beginning. We just refer to Zizek's comment that we didn't listen to history actually. We read history, we learn from history, but human being has a very common tendency to forget. I would like to mention that very forgetting essay that once upon a time we had in our school days.
Yes,
So
yes,
we often
Nagiram
forget.
Kejaram. Yeah.
Think of the politicians. They promise 5 years and we forget what did they promise, and then they come up with the very same agenda, same issues.
Yeah.
We
Yes.
learn, and the discussion we are having right now, we must forget within a few days, until or unless we practice them, make it a regular practice in our everyday life. So every beginning is a new beginning. So we don't know what is coming next, but we have to be prepared. What a good thing. I have just written a paper on COVID-19 and health just a few days back. So my observation in that paper that I would like to put here also, that for every new challenges, we need to be self-sufficient, and COVID-19 has raised the issue that when no one is coming at your home, you are confined, you are making a room, you are making a country within your home, and you are doing everything. You are cleaning your clothes, you are cleaning your floor, you are cooking yourself, you are doing everything, all those activities for which you were dependent on someone else. Now you are doing everything. You are making your homemade mask even without even going to the market to purchase and to. So this very self-dependence, I think, is the only way through which we can meet every challenges. So every beginning is new to me.
This is a kind of a new thing. This is the new thing, right? But what about this question? Like, do you think it's a continuum process? What happened during Defoe's time, from Defoe's time to from now, could it be put in a continuum?
It is a kind of if the questions are asked to some scientist, even probably he would be the right person to give an answer for this. But from a man like me who is from a literature background, but I love science journals even. So for me, my observation is that yes, if we think of that Malthus's theory, that famous Malthus's theory, that when a huge population was there, such kind of a natural disaster must come. For any situation, when it is on that very extreme level, it may not be all the time pandemic. It may be like tsunami in the Andaman, or like
Or
Rishikesh
the
or
cloudburst.
Haridwar, the kind of
Yes, yes,
that everything
cloudburst.
wiped out in a flash, cloud burst. So it will happen because otherwise there will no be natural balance even. To make the balance of nature, nature is a very silent observer. So
Yes.
if we the human beings are crossing the limit, he's always there to teach us a good lesson.
So as you said that nature is, we have another question. It's by Nabab, and he says, and he asks, do you think the current pandemic as a revenge of nature on human? But I think you have already
Yes, I
answered the
think
question.
yes, I have already answered.
Yeah.
We can say nature, but there are so many observations, because some are saying that the kind of COVID virus is a artificially cultured one. So is it by nature or is it by human being? The future will say, time will say, that we cannot take the decision right now.
At least if it's not a revenge, at least we are trying to reshaping the future. I think the
Sure,
nature is telling us to reshape the future.
sure, sure.
Right. Thank you very much, sir, for giving your consent.
Thank you.
And I
Thank
hope
you.
in future, if we arrange another seminar or webinar, you'll be there. If it's on internet platform, yes, I think you will be happy to give your
Sure,
consent.
I'm very
Thank you very
happy,
much, sir.
very happy. Thank you, head of the department, Abhishek Mastri, and Khatun, assistant professor of
Thank you,
Tagore
sir.
Mahavidyalay. Thank you for this
Thank you,
beautiful
sir.
program and arrangement, and I'm also happy. Thank you to all the listeners
Yeah.
and their questions.
Yes, all the participants and all our resource scholars and resource persons, especially you, sir, for accepting it in such a short notice. And thank you so much for being here. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
And
Thank
I
you.
must also thank Astrid because she was the one who contacted you. So I must
Yes,
also
yes,
thank her.
Yeah.
yes. Okay, okay.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Have a
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Yes. Okay, so yes, Shamsundar sir is here. Good evening,
Right.
sir.
So
Yes.
good evening, sir. Good evening.
Okay.
So we have come to the end of our webinar. Now
Yes.
we have with us Dr. Shamsundar Pradhan, the coordinator of IQAC, Sagor Mahavidyalay, and he is going to give a vote of thanks. Sir, Shamsundar sir.
Okay. Uh, Good afternoon. A hearty congratulations to all. After a successful completion of the one-day national webinar titled Pandemic, Climate Change and Literature, organized by the Department of English, Sagor Mahavidyalay, in collaboration with IQAC. I, as a coordinator of IQAC, would like to express my heartfelt thanks to all. First of all, I would like to thank the President of the governing body, Sagor Mahavidyalay, Mr. Bankim Chandra Hazra, MLA, Sagor Assembly Constituency, Chairman, Sundarban Development Board, and Gangasagor Bokhali Development Authority for his benign presence and support. Next, credit goes to our beloved and honorable teachers in charge and the president of the organizing committee, Mr. Probir Kumar Khatua, for his wholehearted support and positive attitude. Let's time to express my vote of thanks to the distinguished resource person, Dr. Ratan Bhattacharjee, Associate Professor and Head of Postgraduate Department of English, Damdam Motijhil College, and International Visiting Professor, USA, and columnist. Dr. S. Ayappa Raja, Associate Professor, Department of English, Annamalai University, and Mr. Shobuz Sarkar, Assistant Professor, Department of English, University of Gaurbanga, who in spite of their hectic schedule have given us time to translate our dream into reality. We all have been enriched by the valuable information on different aspects of the topic. Really, I heartily congratulations to you. Then, I would like to express my thanks and sincere gratitude to all the virtual participants of the webinar. Next goes to my attention to Mr. Abhishek Mistry and Mrs. Asrin Khatun, Department of English, Sagar Mahavidyalaya, and both convener and joint convener of this webinar, who have taken a pivotal role to arrange or organize everything to this webinar. They really deserve our praise. Next, my sincere thanks goes to the organizing members of the Department of English, Sagar Mahavidyalaya, Mr. Indranil Das, Mr. Dibendu Maiti, and Mrs. Asma Khatun, and Mr. Hafizul Haq, Assistant Professor, Department of History, and Secretary of Teachers Council for their supporting hands. At last, I would like to express my sincere thanks to all teaching and non-teaching staffs and students of Sagar Mahavidyalaya and technical supporters of Galaxy IT Station for their other works and technical support for this webinar. Thank you all.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir, for giving us this the vote of thanks at last. And you have forgot one name actually, that is yours. Thank you for sir for this incessant assistance, and thank you for being the banyan tree under which we are working, and thank you for always inspiring us, because
You have been a
it
true
wouldn't have
inspiration.
come together. Yes, it wouldn't have come together if you weren't there, because we just annoyed you, you just phoned you always, and you just all took it with good heart, and you just went with us, you flowed with us. And thank you so much for being this wonderful IQAC coordinator and being this wonderful person that you are. Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. I think Asin has said everything. I have nothing
Yeah.
more to say. I have only gratitude for you. That's all. Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. And our TIC sir, obviously, without his patronage, without his without his
Yes.
help,
Now
without his, yes, sir.
I will now request our honorable teacher in charge, our beloved teacher
Yes,
in charge, Mr.
yes.
Probir Kumar Khatua sir, to officially, formally declare the end of this webinar. Sir, Probir sir, I think we have lost him
He is, yes, we have lost the connection,
in the connection.
but we can see another. I
Is he
guess we
there?
have lost the connection. No, he isn't. Ask Sanjay Babu if he's here.
Okay, let me connect him.
Yes. Let me ask Sanjay Babu if he's here.
I think he's trying to connect because he has just cut the phone. He disconnected the
Okay.
phone. I just called him.
Okay. Maybe some technical glitches, maybe some network issue. That
I
is why
think
he
network issue. Yeah.
isn't, yeah, network issue isn't.
Okay, so before he joins, again clarifies. Let me again clarify that the E is
He is here.
yes here he is.
Hello.
TIC sir, are you there? Hello, TIC sir.
Hello.
Hello. Yes sir, we can see
হ্যাঁ
you.
উনি শুনতে পাচ্ছি স্যার।
Hello.
Hello.
Hello, hello. Sir, শুনতে পাচ্ছি আমরা.
Hello.
We can hear you, sir. Hello. I think he's having network issue. Hello. 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 Provis sir is here, but I think he's having some technical issues, probably network issue. Hello. Hello. I think he's saying something. Hello. Sir, unmute yourself, sir. Hello. Sir, you're not audible, sir. We can see you, but you're not audible. Hello.
স্যারের ইয়ে অ্যাকচুয়ালি মিউট করা আছে, স্যার বুঝতে পারছেন না। স্যার আনমিউট করুন স্যার।
Sanjay Babu, can you do something? Can you unmute Provis sir from here, from your end?
Hello.
Hello. Yes, sir. You're audible now. Oh God, I think he got disconnected.
Hello. Hello.
স্যার আপনাকে শোনা যাচ্ছে, বলুন স্যার।
Hello.
ইয়েস স্যার, আপনাকে শোনা যাচ্ছে, বলুন স্যার, বলুন।
Hello.
হ্যাঁ স্যার শোনা যাচ্ছে, স্যার বলুন।
Hello.
স্যার শোনা যাচ্ছে, বলুন স্যার।
At last we are.
Hello. Asin, can you hear me?
Yes, yes, sir. Yes, I can hear.
Um, did sir get disconnected again?
No, sir.
I think.
Actually, is not disconnected. No, sir is not disconnected. But then we cannot hear a singles
Okay,
word
I'm
from
doing
him because
something.
of some network. Yes,
I'm calling him and I'm holding the earphone. Okay.
yes, yes. That will do.
I
Yeah,
think,
that would do.
yeah, hold.
Okay, somebody's commenting that continuous 4 hour session is madness. We actually agree that yes, it is madness, but then thank you for your patience. All of the participants, thank you for your patience. Thank you for participating in this madness. Thank you. And again, it is important that TIC sir concludes this. It is important for us. That is why we are taking
Okay,
time.
Okay, so TIC sir is having some sort of technical problem. So
Yes.
I'm holding my microphone and he's going to say he's going to he is going to officially declare the end of this program through my microphone.
At last, we are well informed, fully satisfied, enriched, and totally overwhelmed. Now, I am declaring the end of this one-day national webinar. With thanks to all, especially to the Department of English and IQAC, Sagar Mahavidyalaya, and chief renowned speaker of this webinar. Thank you.
Okay, I think
Okay,
everyone has
thank you.
heard TIC sir.
And yes.
Thank you, TIC sir, very
Yes.
much. Your support was very essential and it was the strength. Otherwise, we wouldn't have made this possible. And I feel that the webinar is a success. It has been
Yes, it
successful
is.
simply because of a combined teamwork by the entire organizing committee, starting from our IQAC coordinator, our teacher in charge, from the patronage of our MLA, Mr. Bomkim Hajra, the members of the organizing committee, Mr. Hafizul Haq, Mr. Indranil Das, Mr. Dibyendu Maiti, Mrs. Asma Khatun, and our joint convener, Ms. Asrin Khatun. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello. So I'm again telling you that the e-certificates will be provided only after successful submission of the feedback link, and feedback link will be sent to your email address. Everybody is requested to check their email address, and also for guidance they can check their WhatsApp group. Thank you very much.